Chapter 308. Afterward, the middle-aged wizard put the crystal back and snapped his fingers. A flash of light appeared and disappeared. Moments later, someone knocked on the door of the room. Afterward, a wizard walked in and handed a brocade box to the middle-aged wizard. "Sir, this is the advanced soul crystal that we have in our store." The middle-aged wizard opened the brocade box and saw a purple crystal the size of an egg sitting quietly inside. Hathaway reached out and picked up the crystal. Afterward, she began to inspect it. Soon, Hathaway finished her inspection. This was indeed an advanced soul crystal. Since there was no problem with the goods, the next step was to discuss the price. "Sir, if you want to use magic crystals to exchange for high-grade soul crystals, you will need at least 30 magic crystals of this size to exchange for one high-grade soul crystal." The middle-aged wizard pointed at the magic crystal on the side. "Impossible. This price is too ridiculous." Su Len rejected without even thinking. Although a soul crystal is precious, its value is not as high as 30 magic crystals. "Sir, you should be well aware of the preciousness of high-grade soul crystals. These low-grade magic energy crystals aren't bad, but they aren't too rare. If you want to exchange them for high-grade soul crystals, you'll have to raise the price." The middle-aged adept explained with a smile. "Even so, this price is already more than double. We will not accept this price." Su Len shook his head. "All right then. How many do you think are suitable?" The middle-aged magus carefully observed the expressions on their faces, trying to figure out what was going on. Unfortunately, both of them were wearing masks and cloaks, so he couldn't see any abnormalities. This made the middle-aged magus feel a little disappointed, and he muttered to himself. "Judging from their size, they should be a man and a woman. Judging from their voices, they should be quite young. It's just a little strange that there are not many great wizard-level witches, and there are only a few of them in the vicinity of the Kingdom of Florence. Besides, there are not many young ones. Could it be that they just advanced? I haven't heard of any wizard organization that has advanced recently. Could it be a wandering wizard or a traveler from somewhere else? The male sorcerer beside her is a grade 2 sorcerer. Could he be the sorcerer's boy toy? I'm so lucky to have a great adept as my mistress. Wouldn't it be easier for me to advance in the future?" Su Len didn't know that the middle-aged man in front of him had already identified him as a man who lived off a woman. If he knew, he would definitely teach him a lesson personally. "I think 20 mana crystals for one advanced soul crystal is very suitable." Su Len thought for a moment and said. "According to this price, the soul crystals would be purchased at a premium of 1/3. I'm sorry, but we can't accept this price." The middle-aged magus shook his head. After that, Sullen's group and the middle-aged adept went back and forth over the price. Finally, they reached a price that both parties could barely accept. 23 magic crystals for a high-grade soul crystal, which was a 50% premium. After confirming the price, the two sides began to trade. Su Len took out 92 magic crystals of similar size from his storage space and gave them to the middle-aged wizard. He then put away 4 high-grade soul crystals. Seeing Su Luen take out so many magic crystals at once, the middle-aged wizard was also secretly shocked. They couldn't have found a magic crystal mine, could they? After completing the trade, Sullen's group didn't stay any longer and immediately left the shop. After taking out such a large amount of mana crystals for the trade, both of them became more vigilant. Humans would die in pursuit of wealth, and birds would die in pursuit of food. This was a famous saying in both his previous life and this world. As long as there were enough benefits, he didn't think that no one would dare to do anything to him, a rank 4 great wizard and a rank 2 wizard. Even though the shops here were very trustworthy, if the person who leaked the money was not a member of the nearby magus organization, it was very likely that he was a wandering magus or someone who came from another region to explore. He still had to be careful to avoid being tricked. Hence, after completing the trade, the two of them didn't stay any longer. They pretended to continue looking for items while being cautious to see if anyone was spying on them. After making sure that no one was following them, Sulan and Hathaway continued to walk to the other shops. However, what happened next made him very disappointed. After entering a few shops, he couldn't find the materials that Hathaway needed. It wasn't that these shops didn't have anything good. Some of the magic materials that the shops actively recommended were very rare. Hathaway was also tempted, but unfortunately, they didn't have enough to trade. In the Magus world, although Kinnar could be used, many high-grade items couldn't be bought with Kinnar. They could only be exchanged with other materials. Kinnar could only buy some low-grade magic materials and magic items. He still wanted to see if he could exchange the remaining items in his storage space for a legendary elemental core. The most important material in the arcane garden was the legendary elemental core. With this, Sulan could start building the sky garden. Looks like we can only wait for the auction. After walking around all the shops, the two of them stood at the end of the street and shook their heads helplessly. The auction in the Magus town would be held in 3 days. Sulan and Hathaway naturally didn't plan to wait here for 3 days. After finding the auction and buying a voucher, Sulan and Hathaway took the Pegasus from the inn and left the Magus town together. The Pegasus' speed was very fast. At about 10 o'clock at night, the two of them would arrive at Northtown City. In the next 2 days, Hathaway began to prepare to make a rock puppet, and Sulan prepared all kinds of magic materials. In the blink of an eye, 2 days had passed. Early in the morning of the 3rd day, after Sulan had arranged everything, he took Hathaway and rode the Pegasus straight to the Magus town. After arriving at the Magus town, the number of magi in the town had more than doubled compared to the last time they were here. It seemed like any Magus with a little bit of status wouldn't want to miss this annual auction. At the entrance of the Magus town, there were also extra people. As soon as they walked into the Magus town, the whole street was full of magi in all kinds of clothes. There were many people in strange clothes, and there were even more who wore cloaks like Sulan and Hathaway. The two of them didn't stop outside. After settling the Pegasus in the inn, they directly took the auction voucher and went to the huge castle at the end of the street. In front of the castle's gate, a few magi were buying admission vouchers. There was a layer of water blue light at the gate. Hathaway took out the voucher and injected a little bit of magic into it. A blue light shot out from the voucher, and the water blue light immediately opened up a 2-meter wide passage. The two of them didn't stop and walked in. As soon as they entered, the energy barrier behind them returned to its original state. After entering the castle, they realized that the castle was bigger than it looked from the outside. The whole hall was more than 1,000 square meters. At the front of the hall, there was a wide platform. At this time, there was nothing on the platform. There were all kinds of tables and chairs neatly arranged in the hall, and there were some magi already sitting on the seats. The magi in this hall were all rank 1 and rank 2 magi. There were about 200 to 300 people in total. On the second floor of the hall, there were individual private rooms. These private rooms were only for advanced magi, and of course, they had to pay more. Under the guidance of a staff member, the two of them came to a private room on the second floor. After waiting quietly for more than an hour, there were about 400 to 500 rank 1 and rank 2 magi in the hall downstairs. A few bell rings sounded, and the auction officially began. Sulan and Hathaway sat in the private room and quietly looked at the platform in the hall. On the platform, a middle-aged magus in a silver magus robe was holding a green magus magic staff and briefly introducing it. Thorny magic staff. This is a magic staff made with great care by Master Ollivander. The main material of the magic staff is magic willow. This material is very suitable for the transmission of magic. The material is also very tough. After being made into a magic staff by Master Ollivander, it can increase the casting speed and reduce the casting difficulty. It can also slightly increase the power of spells. In addition, this magic staff also contains a defensive spell called Thorny Shield. It can be released instantly without any preparation. The starting price of this magic staff is 100,000 kinner worth of magic materials. Intermediate magic materials cost 1.5 times the price. Advanced magic materials don't need to go over the price. Every increase is 5,000 kinner worth of magic materials. The magus in charge of the auction was a rank 3 magus. Although he was a little far away, his voice could be heard clearly throughout the hall. He was very proficient in sound amplification. As soon as he finished speaking, someone immediately raised their paddle. Then, the price of this thorny magic staff, which Su Len thought could only be considered decent, quickly rose to 130,000 kinner worth of magic materials. Although this magic staff had many functions, such as reducing the casting difficulty, reducing the consumption of magic, and increasing the power of spells, these effects were just barely satisfactory. The magus who made this magic staff wanted to take care of everything, but in the end, it didn't meet his expectations in all aspects. The following auctions were also carried out in a lukewarm manner. During this time, some decent items appeared. For example, there was a dragon skin robe. The magic light on it had already reached rank 3. It was a very good robe. Su Len only called out the price once, and the price exceeded 200,000 kinner worth of magic materials. He could only give up. In the end, this dragon skin robe was sold for 280,000 kinner worth of magic materials. This price had actually exceeded the value of the item itself. Of course, it was normal for the price to be higher in an auction. Other than these equipment, the most popular items in the auction were various potions. For example, the Azure Potion, which could increase the efficiency of meditation, was very popular. Every time it appeared, it would be highly sought after. Chapter 309. The organizer of the auction was obviously very experienced. Every once in a while, they would take out a more precious item for auction and then attract the attention of the public. But more often than not, the items auctioned were not very good. Although some materials were rare, as long as one had enough money, they could also be bought in large stores. Therefore, in the auction house, the competition was not too fierce. Only rare items that occasionally appeared would cause intense bidding. As the items appeared one by one, time passed little by little. Several heavyweight items appeared in the auction and instantly set off a bidding frenzy. Several treasures appeared in a row, and the competition was fierce. Soon, the atmosphere of the entire auction became extremely hot. A piece of mithril, 832 grams, a rare metal material, the starting price is 350,000 kinner, a high-level magic material. Note that it is a high-level magic material. The price increase should not be less than 10,000. A piece of silver-white metal with a strange light appeared on the auction stage. The metal was slightly bigger than a fist, but the surface was like a layer of scales. When he heard the words, mithril, Sullen's body suddenly tightened, and his eyes stared at the piece of metal. Mithril, one of the most precious magic metals, was an important material for building a floating space city. It could be said that you could never have enough of it. He did not expect to see a piece of it here. 380,000, 400,000. 500,000. Mithril was really famous. Before Su Luen could bid, many people had already bid one after another. Soon, the price exceeded 500,000. Su Luen hesitated several times and finally gave up bidding. He didn't have many things that could be exchanged. Once he bid for this piece of mithril, he wouldn't be able to get the legendary rank elemental crystal core. And this piece of mithril was not too big. It was not enough for a floating space tower, let alone a floating space city. Su Len also produced mithril in the silver mine in the underground world. Although the amount was not much, it was more than enough to build a floating space tower. After weighing the pros and cons in his heart, Su Len decided to give up. After a while, the price of this piece of mithril rose to 1 million, which made Su Len, who was still a little unwilling, give up completely. Since he had already decided, Su Len no longer hesitated and looked at those people fighting for it with a relaxed face. There are so many rich people. Su Len couldn't help but shake his head. At first, he thought that he was quite rich, but after coming here, he realized that there were many rich people among the wizards. In the end, the price of the mithril rose to 1.23 million kinnar worth of high-grade magic material. The auction continued. Except for lunchtime, the auction continued. Finally, at around 4 p.m., the item that Su Len had been waiting for appeared. A legendary level Earth Elemental Crystal Core in perfect condition. A high-grade magic item or magic material worth 350,000 kinnar. Every bid must be increased by at least 10,000. As his voice fell, an earthy yellow elemental core that looked like a crystal ball appeared on the auction stage. 360,000. 380,000. As soon as the voice fell, the crowd couldn't wait to start bidding. This time, Su Len was not in a hurry to make a bid. He was determined to get this item, so he would let those people fight for it first. When the price was high enough, he would call out a bid. Soon, the price of this elemental crystal core had risen to 950,000. After reaching this price, the number of people participating in the bidding decreased a lot. Finally, when the price reached 1,060,000, several people who were originally following closely behind hesitated and chose to give up. 1,100,000. Su Len tapped lightly on the crystal mirror in front of him. The mirror flashed a few times, and a price was called. 1,120,000. That person seemed to need this item very much, and hesitated for a moment before bidding again. 1,150,000. Su Len immediately increased the price. 1,160,000. This time, after a while, that person called out a bid again. Su Len smiled slightly, and called out a bid of 1,170,000 again. On the auction stage, the middle-aged wizard who was hosting the auction called out the price twice as usual. When he was about to call out the price for the third time to confirm the success of the auction, suddenly, another cold voice called out. 1,200,000. Su Len was slightly stunned, and so was the middle-aged wizard who was hosting the auction. However, he immediately reacted and shouted excitedly. 1,200,000 going once. 1,200,000 going twice. 1,210,000. Su Len shouted without hesitation. 1,220,000. This person calmly raised the price again, as if money was nothing to him. This made Su Len's expression change. Once this happened, both parties would definitely fight to the death in the end. Both parties were in the VIP room on the second floor, which meant that the other party was at least a high-grade wizard. After hesitating for a moment, Su Len's expression changed. He made up his mind and directly called out a price that shocked all the wizards present. 1,500,000. As soon as this price was called out, the auction house was in an uproar. The other wizards all looked at the VIP room on the second floor with strange expressions. This price had actually far exceeded the price of a legendary elemental core. The auctioneer's face lit up with joy. It was very likely that this was the highest price in this auction. Su Len's face was expressionless as he stared at the other VIP room. The auctioneer began to call out the price again. Soon, the two bids were called out, but there was still no sound from the VIP room. The middle-aged auctioneer was a little disappointed. He called out the price again and directly dropped the hammer. After paying a huge price, Su Len finally got this elemental core. After this climax, the auction quickly came to an end. The final item was only sold for 1,400,000 kinnars. After the auction ended, Su Len was led to the back of the hall by a beautiful wizard apprentice to carry out the transaction. Your Excellency, the legendary elemental core you bought is a high-grade magic item or magic material worth 1,500,000 kinnar. You need to give it to us for evaluation. A wizard said with a smile on his face. Okay. Hathaway nodded and said. She then took out a portal bag and put it on the table. The wizard snapped his fingers, and a light flashed. Soon, a wizard about 60 years old walked in. This is the chief appraiser of our auction house, Mr. Bacon. He will evaluate the items you have provided. The wizard explained and then handed the portal bag to him for evaluation. Next, the wizard named Bacon began to take out the items in the portal bag one by one to evaluate them. 6 bottles of azure potion, high quality, 15,000 kinnar a bottle. 2 bottles of purple light potion, high quality, 20,000 kinnar a bottle. 4 bottles of moonshine potion, high quality, 13,000 kinnar a bottle. 3 pieces of your own leather armor, grade 3 magic item, 35,000 kinnar a bottle. The appraiser named Bacon was indeed very good. He did not underestimate the price at all. He set the price according to the retail price. Sulen nodded and accepted the price. Soon, all the items were evaluated. In the end, all the items added up to a total of 1,070,000 kinnar. Sir, the price of these items did not reach 1,500,000 kinnar. After confirming the price of all the items, the wizard said with a gloomy face. It's not over yet. Sulen took a step forward and took out a white ring from his pocket. He then put it on the table and said, add this. It was the bone control ring that Sulen got from the necromancer. This is a high-grade magic ring. The wizard's heart skipped a beat when he saw the items on the table. He then carefully picked up the ring and reluctantly handed it to Bacon for evaluation. Among all the magic items, rings and other accessories were the most expensive. This was because compared to magic staffs, robes, magic books, or scrolls, rings and necklaces were too small. It was very difficult to engrave complex runes on such small objects. Think about the artificial micro-engraving technology. Engraving on a ring required tens or even hundreds of complex runes. Then, these runes would form a rune circle. Only then would it be considered a success. If there was a single mistake, the ring would be useless. Therefore, the price of a high-grade magic accessory was more than twice the price of other magic items of the same grade. Good stuff. Wizard Bacon looked at the ring for a while. He then put down his crystal glasses and couldn't help but praise. It's been a long time since I've seen such exquisite craftsmanship. This should be something that only a master alchemist could make. The only pity is that this ring can only be made by a necromancer. If it was a common magic ring, it would cost at least 600,000 or 700,000. But now, I can only estimate it at 500,000. Do you too accept this price? Yes. Hathaway nodded and said. Then we'll pick out the extra 70,000 kinnar worth of goods. Also, this legendary earth elemental crystal core is yours. The wizard on the side said. You don't have to pick out the stuff. Just exchange it for 70,000 kinnar worth of materials. Hathaway said as she took the legendary earth elemental crystal core and inspected it. That works too. What materials do you need? The wizard asked with a face full of joy. It's all on this list. Hathaway handed over a list of materials that were not available in the northern town. The auction had just ended, and they had collected a large amount of magic materials. The materials on the list were not too rare, so it didn't take long for them to collect all of them. After checking all kinds of goods, both sides were very satisfied. Sulen and Hathaway took the things and left the auction house. They didn't stay for long. They went back to the inn and left the wizard town with the Pegasus. Chapter 310. The two left the wizard town and stopped hiding. Sulen got on the horse and carried Hathaway in his arms. He rode the Pegasus and soared into the sky. The Pegasus neighed and galloped forward. Damn it, that's a Pegasus. Why do they have such a thing? Chase them. What's there to chase? Do you think you can catch up with a Pegasus? Just as Sulan and Vivian left quickly on the Pegasus, 3 people in black wizard robes suddenly ran out from the woods below and looked at the figures disappearing into the sky. Sulan didn't know that there were a few wizards ambushing him. Even if he knew, he wouldn't care. According to the speed of the Pegasus, the wizards' flying spells were far from being able to catch up with it. Unless they had flying magic items, such as magic carpets or airships. Flying items were not common in this world because wizards preferred to use teleportation spells instead of flying slowly when traveling long distances. The Pegasus carried the 2 of them across the sky like a shooting star. Finally, 2 hours later, they arrived at the northern town city. Letting the Pegasus rest and play by itself, Sulan excitedly carried Hathaway back to the bedroom in the Lord's castle. Then, he pulled Phyllis and the 2 little maids over to play a Russian roulette game. Early the next morning, Suluan got up feeling refreshed. Although it cost a lot to attend the auction this time, he got all the things he wanted and bought them. In addition to the elemental crystal cores to build the arcane garden, he also got 7 advanced soul crystals. Hathaway planned to build 2 gargoyle magic statues with these soul crystals, and the rest was to build the iron magic statue. The gargoyle magic statue belonged to the advanced rock magic statue. Its craftsmanship was higher than the previous rock magic statue. These gargoyle magic statues could also fly. Although their strength was slightly inferior to the rock magic statue, it was already very exaggerated compared to humans. The gargoyle statue was made entirely of obsidian. Although the cost of manufacturing such a statue was several times higher than that of a rock statue, its physical defense and magical defense were much higher. Whether it was used for combat or carrying bricks, it was a good choice. The wizard tower was over 100 meters tall. With these 2 gargoyles, the speed of transporting materials was much faster. In fact, normal wizard towers didn't need to be this tall, but Sulan wanted to build a floating city. As the control center of the floating city, a wizard tower had to be tall enough. Hathaway picked out 2 batches of the best obsidian and sent them to her laboratory. At the same time, she gathered the last remaining craftsmen in Northern Citadel and had them carve according to the blueprint. The structure of the gargoyle stone golem was more complicated, and the craftsmanship required was much higher than that of the rock golem. However, Hathaway had already done her research. Although the production progress was a little slow, there were no problems. Sulan came here to check a few times and found no problems, so he was relieved. At the same time, he began to prepare for the arcane garden. The arcane garden was also known as the Sky Garden. It was a spectacular building that was built with a combination of fountains, flower beds, terraced platforms, and complex runic circles. Sulan had been studying the construction process for a long time. This building required a large amount of pure white marble and granite. Fortunately, there were enough rocks in the Sierra de Lotus. He just had to let the workers dig. In addition to the marble and granite, the arcane garden also required a lot of magic crystals. Magic crystals were used to make energy channels. There were not many magic crystals left in Northern Citadel after the trade between the Arcane Mirror and the Wizard Town. They would have to wait for the Crystal Beast's magic crystals to mature next month. The fountains in the garden were even easier to make. Sullen's Earth Spring was too easy to make. There were a lot of runic circles in the Arcane Garden, and they needed to be made slowly. The only way to build the Arcane Garden was to use Earth Elemental Crystal Cores. Only Earth Elemental Crystal Cores could make the soil suitable for the growth of magic plants. Other fire, water, and wind elements were not suitable. Elemental crystal cores were very rare in the main material world. They were only produced in large quantities in the elemental plane. Intermediate and low-level elemental crystal cores could be obtained by killing giant wind elementals. However, not every elemental creature could drop an elemental crystal core. In the 4 major elemental planes, the giant elemental creatures could only be regarded as small fish, and the elemental elders were the mini-bosses. The more powerful ones were the demigod-level elemental jinns like the Wind Jinn. The wishing spell in the sorcerers was to summon the elemental jinn and then fulfill it. There were also 4 elemental gods living in the depths of the elemental plane. They were the real big bosses. Before the era of the Arcane Empire, the demons of the bottomless abyss wanted to conquer the multiverse. As a result, as soon as they came out of the abyss, they bumped into the oldest elemental gods. Then, these elemental gods brought a large number of elemental creatures and directly smashed the demon army. No one knew how many elemental creatures there were in the elemental plane. It was said that after elemental creatures died in other planes, they would be resurrected in the elemental plane. However, their past memories would certainly not be retained. Unless they were at the level of the elemental elders, they would not have any memories. Sulen took the earth elemental crystal core and studied it. It was a piece of earthy yellow crystal. The core was not circular. Its surface had many flat surfaces, and the overall appearance was close to a circle. This thing had many uses. It could affect the size of the gravity within a range, and it could make the land in an area fertile. At the same time, the energy consumed in the earth elemental crystal core would slowly be absorbed from the surrounding air. In theory, as long as the consumption was not excessive, the energy of this earth elemental crystal core would not be exhausted. In the future, if he wanted to build a floating space city, he must use earth elemental crystal cores above the legendary level to create gravity for the floating space city. This way, after the floating space city entered the astral plane, the things inside would not float up. In addition to gravity, the floating space city would face many other difficulties, such as air circulation, water circulation, and other basic problems. However, it was still early to study these. After all, even the problem of the floating space city's energy core had not been solved. Even if the other problems were solved, it would be useless. Sulen was not in a hurry to build the arcane garden. The 3rd phase of North Town City's construction was not over yet, and he could not transfer too many people for the time being. Even if he wanted to build the arcane garden, he would have to wait until the 3rd phase of the construction was completed. He could only ask people to prepare the materials in advance while he led people to speed up the construction at the construction site. The 3rd wall of North Town City was a huge project. Sulen was now very envious of the strength of the temples. These churches that came to North Town City each had more than 10 spellcasters. With so many spellcasters casting mud to rock, the construction speed could not be faster. In less than a month, these churches had finished building their respective shrines. All that was left was for the craftsmen to carve and decorate. These craftsmen's carving skills were basically at the master level. Although the shrines had different styles, they all revealed a lofty and dignified aura. As for asking the spellcasters of these churches to help build the city walls, Sulen did not have that much influence. Moreover, this method would easily make the priests angry. Building temples was to serve the gods. This was fine, but what was the point of building a city wall? Unless Sulen wanted to fall out with those churches, he could only give up on this idea. After staying in North Town City for a few days, Sulen went to Mirror Lake City for an inspection. The construction of Mirror Lake City was also in progress, but the housing inside was already completed. The planning of Mirror Lake City was in fact a replica of North Town City. The city was divided into markets, and these markets were for residential housing. Now, there were more than 20,000 people living here. In addition to the housing, the market, business district, production district, city square, and city hall of Mirror Lake City had not been built yet. The original order was to build the housing first to solve the housing problem. As for food, Mirror Lake City still needed North Town City's support for food. Of course, meat was not needed. This place was close to Mirror Lake, so there was an abundance of fish. Occam, the city lord of Mirror Lake City, had done a good job. Next, Mirror Lake City would need to build roads, city hall, business district, production district, and other areas. At the same time, they would need to cultivate more land outside the city. Mirror Lake City needed to feed itself as soon as possible. Sulan did not develop Mirror Lake City to create a burden for himself. There were still many kobolds, gnomes, gnolls, and other monsters around Mirror Lake City, so the army would clear them out every day. At the same time, they would capture the slaves to build the city. Compared to Northtown City, Occam was much crueler to the monsters. Some monster slaves died almost every day. Knock, knock, knock. There was a series of hurried knocks on the door. Come in, Sulan put down the document and looked up. Sir, there are monsters in Mirror Lake. 2 fishing boats were attacked, the messenger reported. Monsters. Occam's expression changed. He immediately stood up and said, My lord, the fishing boats were attacked by monsters. I must go and take care of it. Let's go together. Sulan stood up and walked out. Then, the group hurried to Mirror Lake. Are there monsters in Mirror Lake often? Sulan asked as he walked. Occam said, Last month, we found a water monster, but when we wanted to surround and kill it, the water monster left again. We searched for a long time, but we couldn't find the water monster. But for the construction of the territory, we had to let it go for now. I didn't expect it to appear again this month. Mirror Lake is too big. How are you going to find it with your small fishing boats? Sulan shook his head. Mirror Lake was much bigger than Mirror Lake City. On Sulan's map, Mirror Lake covered an area of 20 square kilometers. It was too easy to hide a few monsters in such a big lake. Chapter 311. Mirror Lake was located in the south of Mirror Lake City. The water was clear and there were plenty of fish. It was one of the most important sources of food for Mirror Lake City. Sulan and Occam soon arrived at the dock. The dock wasn't big. The ground was wet. Many workers were moving the fish. The air was filled with the smell of fish. Seeing Sulan and Occam arrive, the manager of the dock immediately ran over. Your Excellency, Lord City Lord, welcome. The steward bowed respectfully. All right, let's not talk about the formalities. Let's talk about the water monster first, Sulan said, waving his hand. The steward stood up after saluting and said, Yesterday afternoon, we found that 2 fishing boats didn't return on time, so we sent people to search. Today, we found some ship fragments in the fishing area and some scales of water monsters. Then, the manager handed over a palm-sized dark green scale. Sulan took it and examined it. The scale was very tough and slippery. It was very slippery. It was very similar to the water monster Sulan killed in the Red Sand River. Do you know where the water monster is? Sulan threw the scale to Occam and asked. Sorry, we only know the general area where the water monster is active. Sulan said, All right, arrange a boat for me. I'll take care of the water monster myself. Because the water monster lived in a special environment, it was very difficult to rely on a large number of people to besiege it. If there were too many people, it would directly dive into the water. Judging from the habits of this water monster and its preference for sneak attacks, it would definitely not come out if there were too many people. In the Mirror Lake City, only Sulan had the confidence to kill the water monster alone. My lord, it's too dangerous. Let me go. Occam stopped Sulan. All right, it's just a water monster. It's not my match. I haven't been active for a while. Sulan patted his shoulder and said firmly. Then please let me go with you, Occam said after seeing that he couldn't stop Sulan. I agree. Hurry up and prepare the ship. Sulan waved his hand. Occam's strength was at the rank 3 transcendent realm. Even if he encountered a water monster on water, he would still have the strength to protect himself. Furthermore, he would need someone who could sail the boat to help him. Soon, the boat was ready. It was a small sailboat, 6 meters long and 3 meters wide. It only needed 3 to 5 people to operate. It was a fishing boat used by Mirror Lake City to catch and transport fish. After Sulen and Jianghu boarded the boat, Occam and the guide skillfully untied the ropes and raised the sails. Sulen snapped his fingers and summoned a breeze to blow the sailboat away from the port. Mirror Lake covered a large area, so it wasn't easy to find the water monster. Fortunately, Sulen had a strategic map with him, so he could mark out all the enemies around. With Sulen's wind elemental, the sailboat moved very quickly. The boat was like an arrow released from a bow, quickly sailing past the water surface. Soon, the boat arrived at the area where the water monster appeared. Sulen opened the strategic map and started looking for the location of the water monster. Soon, a large number of light spots that represented living creatures appeared on the map. However, most of these light spots were fish. The water monster didn't appear. It wasn't easy to find the water monster among so many light spots. "My lord, this is the location where the water monster appears," the guide said. "Let's cruise around here a few times and see if we can lure the water monster out," Occam said after glancing at Sulen. Under the control of the two people, the boat moved back and forth on the water surface. However, after a while, the water monster still didn't appear. "Make some noise," Sulen said. Sulen said, and Occam nodded. Then he and the guide began to beat the water surface to make sounds. The fish in the lake quickly fled in all directions. Sulen's strategic map quickly reduced the number of light spots by more than half. As time passed, in a dark underwater cave, a figure the size of a small mountain was sleeping. At that moment, a pair of cold and evil eyes that looked like two lanterns suddenly opened in the dark cave. The body that looked like a small mountain moved slowly. The mud and sand under the water suddenly rolled and turned murky. A huge black shadow swam out of the cave. A few thick tentacles swayed gently. Then, the black shadow instantly accelerated and rushed forward. After a few times, the surrounding water was no longer dark. The huge black shadow also became clear. Sulen stood on the sailboat and carefully checked the strategic map. At that moment, he suddenly noticed that a light spot on the map was rapidly approaching. In just a few breaths, the black spot was less than 100 meters away from the boat. Sulen narrowed the strategic map to the upper left corner of his eye and shouted at Occam and the guide, "It's coming. You guys go back to the cabin. The water monster is coming." When the guide heard that the water monster was coming, he was so scared that his face turned pale. He threw away his tools and rushed to the cabin to hide. Occam, on the other hand, took out his weapon and was eager to fight. "Don't attack on the boat. Don't let the water monster crash the boat. If that happens, we'll have to swim back," Sulen warned Occam. At the same time, Sulen circulated the energy in his body. Suddenly, an undercurrent appeared under the water surface. Then, the undercurrent suddenly exploded and pushed the water monster that couldn't dodge in time out of the water surface. A water monster that was more than 10 meters tall like a small mountain appeared on the surface of the water. The body of the water monster was similar to a human and had 4 limbs like a human. However, the front of the limbs was something like a fish's fin. There were also 8 octopus-like tentacles on the back of the water monster. Its body was covered in a layer of dark green scales. Roar! A sharp roar was heard. Sulen suddenly felt a wave of soul fluctuation. A soul thorn formed completely by soul power rushed toward Sulen. The soul ring on Sulen's hand flashed with a white light, and an energy barrier appeared in front of him. After the soul thorn hit the barrier, circles of ripples appeared and then disappeared. Following the water monster's roar, a strange energy wave spread out. Sulen was suddenly frightened, but it disappeared very quickly. On the boat, Occam's face was a little pale. However, his eyes were still firm and fearless when he looked at the water monster. The guide, on the other hand, couldn't stand it. He fainted in the cabin. This is the aura of fear. Su Len frowned. This water monster had a domain-type ability. This ability was very similar to the dragon's aura. It didn't consume any energy, and there was no limit to the number of times it could be used. With this ability, there was basically no need to worry about being surrounded by an army. As long as the aura of fear was activated, those who weren't strong enough and didn't have a strong will wouldn't even have the courage to face it. Of course, this water monster's aura of fear was a little weaker than an adult dragon's aura. However, it was enough to deal with ordinary people. A legendary-level water monster. Su Len took a deep breath. He looked at the water monster with a much more serious expression. Mystic Ice Slash. The purple dragon halberd suddenly appeared in his hand. In the next second, 3 cold ice blades flew out from his weapon. Wherever the ice blades passed, the water instantly froze. In the blink of an eye, they were in front of the water monster. The tentacles on the back of the water monster waved. A powerful water column suddenly appeared and hit the 3 ice blades. The ice blades collided with the water column and were frozen into ice pillars. Water walking. Underwater breathing. 2 beams of light flashed past Sullen's body. After using water breathing, Su Len directly jumped off the ship and rushed toward the water monster. Roar. A sharp roar sounded. The water monster floating on the water roared and quickly waved its fin-like arms. At the same time, it opened its mouth and spat out a dark green water arrow. The surrounding air was filled with a rotten and sour smell. Under the spray of the acid and poison arrows, the surrounding water surface had already turned dark green. Some of the fishes and shrimps that did not manage to escape in time had their bellies turned white. Then, they were completely corroded by the green liquid. Su Len frowned. The acid spray of the water monster in front of him was already comparable to the black dragon of the Pentashade. Although the black dragon's combat power was at the bottom of the Pentashade, an adult black dragon's strength was still at the legendary level. Haste! Sullen's body suddenly sped up and dodged to the side. However, the range of the acid arrow was too wide. Even if he tried his best to dodge, some of the acid still splashed onto the energy shield. Then, he saw the area where the acid came into contact with the energy shield became thinner and corroded. In the end, with a soft sound, the energy shield and the acid disappeared together. The energy shield was a level 5 spell. It had just taken a hit from the soul thorn and now the acid arrow. Finally, it shattered. The acid arrow of the water monster was very powerful. If it were to hit a level 2 extraordinaire directly, not many of them would be able to withstand it. Just now, the area where the acid arrow had been shot by the monster had been cleared out. Strong acid attacks were not friendly to melee professions. They could corrode metal and cause great damage to the body. Even if one could pass the constitution test, there would be terrible scars after the wound was healed. Only melee professions with more than 20 constitution and advanced tenacity and regeneration could ignore this kind of attack. Seeing that Su Len had dodged the acid arrow, the water monster turned its huge body and quickly rushed up. Although it was a little surprised by Sullen's escape, as the strongest overlord in the water, it didn't think that the little human would be a match for it. As a water monster, the lake was its home ground. It was like a fish in water here. Its fin-like arms waved gently, and the water monster rushed up quickly. At the same time, it spat out another acid arrow from its mouth. Summon wind elementals. The wind whistled on the surface of the water. 2 large wind elementals that were 5 or 6 meters tall appeared on the surface of the water. These wind elementals had electric arcs jumping on their bodies from time to time. As soon as they appeared, they rushed up under Sullen's command. Chapter 312. The whirling wind blew the acid arrows away, scattering the dark green acid in all directions. Only a part of it landed on the two large wind elementals, sizzling and emitting white smoke. However, compared to the wind elemental's height of 5 to 6 meters, the consumption was not even worth mentioning. The two wind elementals stirred up a gust of wind and rushed towards the water monster. The huge tentacles on the back of the water monster waved quickly, whipping the wind elementals. The huge body of the wind elementals only lasted for a few seconds before they exploded into a cloud of smoke. Thunderstorm. A rolling thundercloud suddenly appeared, followed by a blue lightning bolt as thick as a water bucket, striking the water monster. The powerful electric current directly shocked the water monster, causing its body to convulse and its tentacles to sway disorderly. However, the damage was not as great as Su Lan had imagined. More electric current was channeled into the surrounding lake water. Blue electric arcs jumped on the surface of the water, and soon disappeared without a trace. 2/3 of the power of the thunderstorm spell dissipated into the surrounding lake water. As a legendary creature, the water monster had high magic resistance, and the greatly reduced thunderstorm spell did not cause any serious damage to it. At most, it made it feel a little uncomfortable and its body became numb. If this was on land, such a powerful thunderstorm would have at least charred the water monster black. Unfortunately, this was the enemy's home ground. After seeing that the thunderstorm was not as effective, Su Lan decisively cancelled the thunderstorm. The huge power of thunder and lightning filled the purple dragon halberd. Although the damage of the thunder and lightning was not good, the additional numbing effect was not reduced at all. After adding the water walk buff, Su Lan could walk on water as if it was flat ground. After seeing that the effect of the thunderstorm was greatly reduced, Su Lan tapped the ground with the tip of his foot and quickly rushed towards the water monster. Silver Dragon Inversed Scales Spear. As the purple dragon halberd was waved quickly, a silver dragon appeared. The dragon's body flashed with lightning, and in the next second, it directly rushed towards the water monster. The water monster that had just recovered from the numbing effect did not have time to dodge. Bang! The water monster's massive body was sent flying nearly 30 meters away. Its originally streamlined body was now riddled with bone-deep wounds. A large amount of blood gushed out from the wounds. Although the water monster looked miserable, its injuries weren't as severe as one would imagine. However, this water monster was unlucky enough to be paralyzed once again. This made using lightning attacks very annoying. Every attack would go through a test of paralysis. Once it failed, it would enter a state of paralysis. Lightning attacks had a very high chance of paralysis. Half Moon Slash. A crescent-shaped light blade flashing with lightning suddenly appeared. Then, it quickly rushed towards the water monster while sticking close to the surface of the water. After recovering from its paralysis state, the water monster immediately summoned a huge water shield. The light blade slammed into the water shield, splitting it in half. Then, it turned into countless water droplets and fell into the water. Although the light blade had broken through the water shield, it had consumed most of its energy. Then, it collided with one of the water monster's tentacles. After leaving a scar on the tentacle, the light blade completely dissipated. Sullen's body quickly glided across the water. In a breath's time, he had crossed a distance of 30 meters and arrived beside the water monster. In front of him, the water monster that looked like a mountain of flesh had just finished casting a spell. At this time, the water monster was in a state of exhaustion and had yet to recover its strength. Sullen's target was its chest and abdomen. From here, he could directly attack the water monster's internal organs. Although he didn't know where the water monster's heart was, and the water monster's body was too big, Su Lan wasn't confident that he could hit its heart in one hit. So, his goal was to open its chest. Dark green scales covered its body. Su Lan waved the purple dragon halberd, and at this time, the water monster forcefully dodged. At the same time, the tentacles on its back swept towards Su Lan. Sulen quickly twisted his body and easily dodged the attack. At the same time, the purple dragon halberd in his hand stabbed towards the scales on the water monster's abdomen. Slash! It felt like a knife cutting through cowhide. Although there was a lot of resistance, the purple dragon halberd still quickly pierced through the scales, cut open the water monster's tough skin, and stabbed into the water monster's muscle layer. After piercing into the muscle layer, the purple dragon halberd was like a scalpel, quickly sliding upwards along the muscle texture. After Sulen's halberd broke through the water monster's defense and left a 1-meter-long wound on its abdomen, the water monster's tentacles frantically whipped towards Sulen. Sulen didn't take it head-on. His body flashed, and he pulled out the purple dragon halberd and quickly retreated. When the purple dragon halberd was pulled out, it also brought out a large piece of flesh, and the water monster's wound became even more serious. Dark green blood splattered, and some of it landed on Sulen's body. The water monster's blood was like a strong acid, and it had a strong corrosive effect. However, this kind of corrosive effect didn't have much effect on Sulen. With his legendary tenacity and 38 points of constitution, the blood only corroded a few black spots on his skin, and he quickly recovered. After dodging the water monster's swipe again, Sulen's purple dragon halberd drew an arc in the air, and then swept towards the water monster again. Flurry! The purple dragon halberd instantly split into countless afterimages, and these afterimages all pierced towards the water monster. Dark green flowers bloomed on the water monster's body, and for a moment, the water monster's body was covered in wounds. The intense pain caused the water monster to constantly hiss, and its sharp roars caused Sulen's ears to tingle slightly. It had to be said that the difference in size in a battle was very obvious. Sulen's attack on this water monster was like stabbing an adult with a needle. Although the wounds were bleeding and painful, the damage was not enough to kill it. Faced with the storm-like attacks, the water monster's eyes turned red. The intense pain made it even crazier, and the 8 tentacles behind it attacked wildly. Faced with the water monster's counterattack, Sulen's purple dragon halberd constantly blocked, and his body twisted to dodge, but he was still hit a few times. Fortunately, he reacted quickly, and was not caught by the water monster's tentacles. Faced with the water monster that seemed to have 8 arms, Sulen was also a little tired. Who told him to only have 2 arms? With so many arms attacking at once, this was cheating, ambushing, and not caring about martial arts ethics at all. Thunder Domain. Powerful thunder energy quickly surged out from Sulen's body, and his body was covered in a layer of jumping thunder and lightning. The purple dragon halberd was completely covered in thunder and lightning, as if it was a weapon made of countless thunder and lightning. After activating the thunder domain, a 30-meter area around Sulen was completely covered in thunder and lightning. Within this area, except for Sulen, all the enemies would be attacked by the thunder and lightning in the air every second. Every thunder and lightning attack would cause some damage, and they would also be paralyzed. However, above the water, a lot of the thunder and lightning energy was dispersed into the lake, so Sulen's energy consumption increased by several times. Although the power did not decrease, the duration was reduced by half. After noticing this situation, Sulen did not delay, and rushed toward the water monster again. The water monster, who was already in a rage, did not show any weakness. It roared, and the sharp cry shook the lake, causing ripples to appear everywhere. A powerful soul force appeared again, and then rushed toward Sulen fiercely. Roar! Sulen did not show any weakness. His eyes were red, and the energy in his body flowed, and then quickly gathered at his throat. In the next second, a loud roar came from his mouth, louder than the water monster's. The sound was like thunder, and it instantly exploded in his ears. The water around Sulen was splashed by the sound in an instant. War Roar, as an ability carried by Sulen's divine power, was also very powerful, and it was even faster than Soul Thorn when it was used. The thunderous sound rang in the water monster's ears. At such a close distance, the water monster, who was not mentally prepared, was instantly stunned by the sound. It felt as if there were 500 bees flying in its ears, and its mind turned into a pile of paste at this moment. The soul thorn that it released was also affected, and its power was greatly reduced. Su Len easily took it. Seeing that the water monster was stunned, Su Len waved the purple dragon halberd and quickly rushed forward. Although it was stunned, the water monster's 8 tentacles were still waving in front of its body. Seeing this, Su Len's purple dragon halberd flashed up and down, and the purple dragon halberd flashed with lightning quickly across the tentacles. The sharp purple dragon halberd continuously slashed across the same spot on the tentacle. In just a few slashes, a tentacle that was 7 to 8 meters long and half a meter thick was cut in half by Su Len. Dark green blood spurted out. The intense pain caused the water monster to recover from the dizziness, and the remaining 7 tentacles swept over from all directions. Thunderstorm. Powerful lightning fell from the sky, and fiercely struck the water monster. Although the damage was not high, the additional paralysis effect appeared again. Su Len did not care and madly attacked one of the tentacles. In the blink of an eye, the other tentacle of the water monster was cut in half by Su Len. After 2 tentacles were cut in half, the water monster's attack power was reduced by a level. Facing the attacks of the remaining 6 tentacles, Su Len was not exhausted. Acid spit. Seeing that Su Len was tangling with the tentacles and was beginning to gain the upper hand, the water monster once again spat acid at Su Len. However, Su Len, who had activated his thunder domain, did not dodge this time. The distance was too close, and the water monster's acid had a wide range. The effect of dodging was not good. Dazzling lightning exploded from Su Len's body, and the powerful electric current formed a lightning screen in the air. The dark green acid and the lightning screen collided. Lightning flashed, and the acid churned, and then suddenly exploded. A large amount of lightning power exploded in an instant. Su Len only felt a sense of emptiness in his body. This was an illusion caused by a large amount of energy consumption. Before he could let out a sigh of relief, the 6 tentacles once again swung over. Su Len's purple dragon halberd swept out, and directly cut one of the tentacles. Then, his body dodged the tentacle behind it, and the tip of his foot kicked off the tentacle, and his body sped up again. Chapter 313. Cold Poison Purgatory. A dark green liquid suddenly appeared in front of Su Len. In the blink of an eye, he was surrounded by the dark green liquid. The venom was highly corrosive and had an extremely low temperature. Su Len was charging forward at this time. He could not leverage himself in midair and was hit in an instant. The cold was followed by pain. Su Len's body was frozen in an instant. The venom and corrosive power were constantly trying to destroy Su Len's body. However, as soon as they entered Su Len's body, they were directly destroyed by the lightning power in his body. The water monster paid a great price and finally killed Su Len. The few remaining tentacles rolled up the dark green ice around Su Len, preparing to kill Su Len completely. Crack! At this moment, the sound of ice breaking came from the ice. Before the water monster could react, a large number of ice cubes suddenly shattered. Su Len's body was wrapped in lightning. A terrifying lightning power gathered around him. Entanglement. 6 tentacles suddenly rushed over, wanting to completely strangle Su Len. However, as soon as they came within 3 meters of Su Len, the explosive lightning power paralyzed all the tentacles. Lightning flashed all over the sky. Su Len's figure flashed like a bolt of lightning and instantly broke through the encirclement of the 6 tentacles. He crossed a distance of more than 10 meters and appeared near the water monster's body. Then, the terrifying lightning power gathered on his weapon. With a splash of blood, Su Len's purple dragon halberd sank more than a foot into the water monster's chest. The water monster's huge body trembled. Then, the arms and tentacles on its body swung wildly. Su Len was sure that he had pierced the water monster's chest. He might have even pierced its heart. However, the water monster did not die even after its heart was pierced. One could imagine how strong this water monster's body was. Sullen's face was a little pale. He did not expect the enemy's vitality to be so tenacious. Although the explosion just now was powerful, the aftereffects were also serious. In just a short period of time, Sulan had consumed more than half of his energy. The water monster's tentacles swung wildly. Sullen's arm exerted force and pulled out the purple dragon halberd. Then, he slashed at the water monster's head fiercely. Slash! Blood splashed in all directions while lightning bolts boomed in the air. The purple dragon halberd's crescent edge deeply pierced into the water monster's head. A third of the water monster's head was cut open, and large streams of hot blood gushed out. This attack had severely injured the water monster once again. With such a serious injury, even if the water monster's body was strong, it was still made of flesh and blood. Its vitality was quickly fading. The tentacles that were wrapped around Sullen's body loosened weakly. A few tentacles began to twitch irregularly. Finally, with a bang, they fell into the lake. Blood dyed the lake dark green. Most of the lightning on Sullen's body had dissipated. His clothes had become tattered. Many parts of his body had become pitch black. A fishy smell wafted out. The water monster's counterattack before its death had caused him quite a lot of damage. If it were not for his strong vitality, legendary toughness, and intermediate regeneration, just the poison and acid alone would have been enough to make him suffer. After there were no more enemies, Sullen's body began to slowly recover. The black poison spots slowly faded away. The areas that had rotted into rotten flesh also began to scab. Although he looked very miserable, his aura was getting stronger and stronger. Just now, when the water monster had the home field advantage, Sulan still managed to kill it. Continuously killing experts of the same rank made his aura even stronger. Even a legendary expert would be affected by it. Congratulations to the host. You have successfully killed a legendary water monster. You have obtained an epic victory. Your name has spread far and wide in the northern wastelands. Prestige plus 10. You have completed the random mission, Raging Water Monster. Your city Mirror Lake City stability plus 20. Popular sentiment plus 15. Your citizens fear you more. You have obtained a gold treasure chest. Congratulations to the host. You have successfully killed a legendary water monster. You have obtained 45,800 experience points. You have obtained a silver treasure chest. You have obtained a legendary talent point. You have obtained the item, Spring of Vitality, *1. Ding! The host has killed 3 legendary experts. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the title, Legendary Slaughterer. Legendary Slaughterer, special title. Acquisition requirements, automatically obtained after killing 3 or more legendary experts. Wearing this title can increase the host's deterrence. During transactions and negotiations, the host can obtain better conditions. Damage to legendary enemies plus 1. There is a chance of enraging the enemy. Ding! After arduous training, you have mastered Weak Poison Resistance. Weak Poison Resistance. During the battle with the legendary water monster, you have been eroded by poison multiple times. Moreover, with your strong physique and regenerative ability, your poison resistance has increased. From now on, you will be immune to poison damage up to 5 points. When receiving magic or physical attacks, any damage with poison effects will be reduced by 5 points. Ability requirements: 20 points of vitality or 15 points of vitality and the ability to regenerate. Ding! After arduous battle, your ability, Intermediate Regeneration, has been upgraded. You have obtained the ability, Advanced Regeneration. Advanced Regeneration, you have fought in a harsh environment. While resisting the cold, poison, corrosion, and pain, your body has been further tempered. You have successfully passed through these extreme environments and defeated the enemy in the end. During this process, your body has undergone a further transformation. At any time, your recovery speed has increased by 15 points. Ability requirements: 25 points of vitality and the ability to regenerate. After the battle ended, they quickly returned to the water area. The huge body of the water monster floated on the water. Su Lin first used ice magic to freeze the huge body of the water monster. Then, he got 2 people to tie the water monster up with ropes and slowly drag it away on the fishing boat. The corpse of a legendary water monster could be said to be priceless. He did not intend to throw it away. After arranging all these, Su Lin closed his eyes and sat in the cabin to check the rewards of this battle. He opened the storage space. At this time, there were 2 treasure chests in the storage space. Su Lin took a deep breath and chose to open them. A beautiful special effect flashed and the cold voice of the system rang in his ears. Congratulations, host, you have opened the platinum treasure chest. You have obtained 1 storage space upgrade voucher. Storage space upgrade voucher? Su Lin's eyes lit up. He then asked the system, how big will the storage space become after each upgrade? After the upgrade, the storage space will increase from the current 10 cubic meters to 50 cubic meters. Do you need anything else? What is the success rate? Su Lin asked with a happy face. Because the host has obtained the storage space upgrade voucher, you don't need anything else for this upgrade. The success rate is 100%. Then hurry up and upgrade. Su Lin said directly. His storage space was now a little small. For example, the water monster just now could not be put in. The space magic in this world was still very good. Basically, all the wizards had a space bag or other space equipment. An ordinary space bag was half a cubic meter to 1 cubic meter. Currently, the largest space equipment was only 15 cubic meters. Su Lin's storage space had increased to 50 cubic meters. Begin the upgrade. With a flash of light, the storage space upgrade voucher disappeared. Then, Su Lin's storage space began to expand in all directions. It only stopped when it expanded to 50 cubic meters. As the flash of light dissipated, the storage space expanded by 5 times. The originally crowded storage space became empty in an instant. Su Lin calmed himself down and opened the remaining gold treasure chest. With a flash of light, the cold voice of the system rang in his ears again. Congratulations, host, you have opened the gold treasure chest. You have obtained the skill, Thunder Prison. Thunder Prison, a new skill evolved from the system skill, Thunder Prison, after combining with the rules of this world. It can create a thunder cage to trap the enemy. During this time, the enemy will not be able to move and will be severely injured by the thunder. Detected that the host has the Thunder Territory. You can integrate the Thunder Prison into the Thunder Territory. Do you want to integrate it? Integrate it. Hearing that he could integrate it into the Thunder Territory, Su Lin quickly agreed. The Thunder Territory was now his strongest state. This skill that could obviously increase the power of the Thunder Territory had to be integrated. Ding, the Thunder Prison skill has been integrated into the Thunder Territory. This integration will consume 1 legendary skill point or legendary talent point. Do you want to integrate it? Su Lin gritted his teeth. Originally, he had planned to save the legendary talent point to upgrade his advanced regeneration to legendary regeneration or to upgrade his anti-magic skills. Now that the Thunder Territory integration also required legendary talent points, Su Lin hesitated for a moment and quickly made up his mind. System, integrate. Begin the integration. As Su Lin chose to fuse, his soul instantly appeared in a strange space. It was not the first time he had entered this space. His soul began to expand rapidly, and endless power surrounded him. The faint lightning symbol in his soul began to flicker with dazzling light, and at the same time, the lightning symbol became more solid. At this moment, he seemed to have understood a lot, but also seemed to have understood nothing. It felt like only a second had passed, but it also felt like countless years. At this moment, a strong sense of repulsion appeared, and Su Luan's soul instantly left that space. The next second, it appeared in his body, as if everything just now had been an illusion. Congratulations, host, the integration is successful. Your Thunder Territory, Basic, has officially been upgraded to Thunder Territory, Intermediate. Chapter 314. Su Luan slowly opened his eyes. After a tough battle, his empty body was once again filled with energy. Traces of lightning energy scattered from his body, and the wounds on his body had already healed. If it were not for the color of the wounds, it would be as if he had never been injured. Even the places on his body that had been corroded by acid and poison were quickly recovering. The poison had completely disappeared, and the black rotting areas were quickly scabbing and then shedding. In less than 10 minutes, these areas had returned to their original state. The advanced regeneration talent was indeed very powerful. With this talent, not only would wounds heal quickly, but it would also grant some supernatural changes. For example, as long as a broken limb was reattached to the body's regeneration ability would regenerate the limb and the body. It was said that with the legendary regeneration talent, even if a broken limb was completely destroyed, the body would grow again after a period of time. In other words, he had the ability to regenerate broken limbs. Su Luan had only seen this talent in slimes and trolls. Su Luan gently opened his hand, and a ball of lightning energy appeared in his hand. The violent lightning energy formed a ball of lightning in his hand. Su Luan held the ball of lightning and gently tossed it up, then caught it again. Then, he continued to perform various actions. The ball of lightning did not change at all under Su Luan's acrobatic actions. It did not look like a violent lightning element at all. In the past, Su Luan couldn't do this. However, after fusing with Thunder Prison and upgrading his Thunder Domain, Su Luan was able to do this easily. Thunder Territory, Intermediate. You have begun to control the power of lightning. When you use lightning energy again, it will be more powerful. You are immune to ordinary lightning damage. The consumption of all lightning energy skills will be reduced by 50%, and the power of all lightning skills will be increased by 50%. After the territory is activated, you can create a world of lightning within 30 meters of yourself. All people or monsters that enter this area will be damaged by lightning. In this territory, your skills, strength, constitution, agility, and magic resistance will be increased by 100%. Su Luan's Thunder Territory had expanded. Of course, his energy consumption had increased as well. Apart from that, his control of thunder and lightning had also become easier. Now, Su Luan could easily control the thunder and lightning to kill the monster even if they were on the surface of the water. Previously, when he used the Thunder Domain, although it was very powerful, he couldn't control the thunder and lightning released. Now, it was different. As long as he was in the Thunder Domain, he could control the thunder and lightning released. It wouldn't be like last time, when 2/3 of the power of the thunderstorm spell was channeled into the lake. For example, Su Luan could now adjust the plasma cannon according to his needs. If the succubus had high magic resistance, he could increase its power. If Phyllis was weak, he could reduce its power. Although its power did not increase by much, Su Luan's combat power had increased by several levels. "Sir, we've arrived." Just as Su Luan was thinking about how to train his lightning control, Occam's voice came from outside the cabin. "Got it." Su Luan took out a clean and intact set of clothes from the storage space and threw away the beggar's clothes. He found a mirror and simply tidied up his appearance before walking out of the cabin. As soon as he came out, he heard deafening cheers from the port. Su Luan was very familiar with such scenes. After calming down these people easily, Su Len looked at the other spoils of war. The corpse of a legendary monster. The corpse of a legendary magical beast was rare. Of course, although the value of this monster was very high, it was still not comparable to that of a giant dragon of the same level. The value of a giant dragon's corpse was shockingly high. The dragon's scales could be used to make high-level enchanted armor. This armor's defensive power was close to that of a giant dragon. Not only did it have strong physical resistance, but it also had high magic resistance. The dragon's skin could be used to make dragon's leather armor or dragon's leather robes. The dragon's horn could be used to make magic wands. The dragon's teeth could be used to make machetes or daggers. The dragon's blood could be used to make dragon's blood potions or hold a dragon's blood baptism ceremony. The dragon's heart was even more precious magic material. The dragon's meat was a precious magic ingredient. Even the dragon's bones could be given to necromancers to make bone dragons. However, if these things were seen by a giant dragon, it would be a big problem. Moreover, it was not easy to hunt a giant dragon. It was not easy to be a dragon slayer. Although this monster was also a legendary magical beast, its value was far less than that of a giant dragon. In order to deal with the corpse as soon as possible, Su Len personally dissected it. At the same time, a few barbarian warriors helped. The monster's blood was all drained and stored in a special crystal container. Although the blood was very toxic and corrosive, it was still a good material. Of course, this blood was very suitable to be used as a casting material for strong acid arrows. As for the monster's meat, Su Len checked it. The meat was poisonous and inedible. He could only freeze it and give it to Hathaway to see what use it had. Although the meat was poisonous, the monster's tendons were very good. They could be used to make crossbow strings. As for the monster's scales and skin, they were all collected. The scales were tough and hard to cut with swords. The surface was smooth and could be used to deflect weapons. It was very good for making armor. Su Len planned to let Hathaway try to make a set of dragon scale armor. The water monster's skin was as tough as a dragon's, and it also had a trace of mana on it. It was a very good magic material, perfect for making wizard robes. As for the water monster's 8 tentacles, they were huge. Each tentacle was more than 10 meters long and 1 meter in diameter. How was he going to make such a big squid leg? Coating it with seasoning and barbecuing it? How big would the barbecue grill be? However, thinking about how delicious the squid leg was, Su Len decided to bring it back and let Frodo, the head chef of Northern Town City, try it. A huge water monster was quickly cut up. As for the magic core, he couldn't find it even after searching for a long time. The magic core was also very rare, just like the dragon crystal. Not every magical beast or giant dragon could give birth to one. There was only a very small chance of finding such a thing in the body of a magical beast. The rest of the monster's organs and bones were collected and processed. The last monster was dissected into many materials just like that. After solving the problem of the monster, Su Len checked the work in Mirror Lake City and couldn't wait to return to Northern Town City. First, he ran to Hathaway's lab and handed the materials from the monster to her. Hathaway was the only master alchemist in Northern Town City. It would be a waste to give these legendary materials to someone else. After seeing so many legendary materials, Hathaway was so surprised that she couldn't close her mouth. She put down her work and took the materials directly to the lab to study. Su Len shook his head and left the lab. The construction of Northern Town City was still progressing steadily. When Su Len returned to the Lord's castle, he saw a gargoyle golem working on the wizard tower that was under construction not far away. This golem was powerful, tireless, and could fly. It was the best tool. 996 and 007 were nothing compared to this golem. The golem could work 365 days a year. It didn't need to be paid and could work at any time except for charging. It was perfect. The only downside was that it was expensive to build. After killing the monster, Su Len was still a little tired. After returning to the Lord's castle, he had a simple dinner and found a few ladies to talk about life. In the next few days, Su Len didn't go out again. He wanted to take a good rest and wander around the city every day. On the fourth day, Su Len found some craftsmen to make something. After killing the orc chieftain, he got a crossbow talisman, which could be used to recruit crossbowmen. He also learned how to make crossbows. Compared to bows and arrows, crossbows were much better. It took 2 to 3 years to make a suitable bow, and it also took a long time for the archer to train. Crossbows were different. Although the structure of a crossbow was complicated, it didn't take as long as a bow and arrow. As long as the style and specifications of the crossbow were determined, they could try to standardize the production. Even if some crossbows were damaged, they could be used again with new parts. Crossbowmen didn't need to train for a long time like archers. As long as they had the strength and understood orders, they could line up and shoot. The range of a crossbow was also longer than a bow. The only problem was that it took a long time to load a crossbow. An archer could shoot a few arrows, but a crossbow couldn't shoot 2 arrows. Therefore, crossbowmen had to line up and have enough people. He asked them to line up and shoot in turns according to the 3-stage shooting method. This method could make up for the lack of shooting speed to a certain extent. Su Len found some craftsmen to set up a weapons bureau and started to research how to make crossbows. The crossbows given by the system were the most basic ones. If the crossbowmen wanted to level up in the future, they could only upgrade by replacing them with better ones. Su Len planned to train the militia in the northern town to use crossbows. The regular army only had a small number of crossbowmen. Since the militia didn't have much time to train and weren't very strong, it was very suitable for them to use crossbows. They only needed to train the commands and formations, and they would continue to work during the rest of the time. When there was a battle, they could immediately equip themselves with crossbows. When they formed a crossbow formation, they weren't any weaker than archers. It was very convenient for defense. The weapons bureau was also built in the inner town, near the Lord's castle. Su Len purposely divided an area for his factory. No one was allowed to get close to it. At the same time, he arranged a large number of people to protect it. Weapons like crossbows were also prohibited from being sold. Chapter 3:15. The weapon bureau only took 2 days to complete, and the attributes were quite good. Weapon Bureau, Department for Research, Development, Improvement, and Production of Weapons. Research Speed +10, Strive for Perfection +8, Craftsman Spirit +10, Work Efficiency +10. Although the attributes were not much, the effects were quite good. Su Len arranged for 30 craftsmen to work on the Weapon Bureau. The first weapon they were researching was the crossbow. The crossbow Su Len had obtained was simple in structure, low in power, short in range, and slow in loading. It had no advantages over the centaur longbows and elven longbows. It was similar to the birch bows used by human archers. This level of crossbow had no advantages at all, so Su Len planned to research and upgrade it before equipping it. Of course, even if they wanted to research and upgrade the crossbow, they still needed to make the basic crossbow first. Many countries had crossbows, but they preferred the powerful ballista. There wasn't much research on small crossbows, and the cost of making one wasn't a small sum. Therefore, the popularity of small crossbows in various countries wasn't high. Normal crossbows were not a threat to knights. In this supernatural world, a knight could wear plate armor and charge back and forth on the battlefield. Normal crossbows could not pierce plate armor at all. Only large ballistae could pose a threat to them. However, ballistae were heavy and difficult to move. As long as they were discovered in advance, the hit rate would be even lower. They were more suitable for siege or defense. Because he had mechanical control and had made ballistae before, making a small crossbow was not difficult for him. Su Len asked the craftsman to help him and made the crossbow according to the blueprint. As long as the frame of the crossbow was made of metal, this part could be poured directly. The other parts were made of flexible wood, and the bowstring was made of cow tendons and other materials. The bowstring used in the crossbow was tougher than normal bows, so it was made of several pieces of cow tendons. When necessary, iron wire could be added to increase the strength. With the completion of the last part, Su Len finally finished making all the parts of the crossbow. After moving his body a bit, Su Len picked up the parts and started to assemble them. Compared to making the crossbow, the assembling speed was much faster. It only took him 10 minutes to complete the crossbow. In fact, the crossbow in the blueprints given by the system was an arm crossbow. However, the arm crossbow took a long time to load, so Su Len modified it and turned it into a leg crossbow. It was the addition of a pedal at the front of the crossbow. When drawing the crossbow, one foot stepped on the pedal and both hands pulled the bowstring. It was faster and more labor-saving than using both arms to draw the bowstring. Su Len tried to pull open the crossbow and put the special bolt into the crossbow machine. The bolt used by the crossbow machine was different from the bolt used by the bow. The bolt used by the crossbow machine had no feather and was shorter than the bolt used by the bow. After fixing the bolt, Su Len led the other craftsmen to a weapon testing field in the back. Su Len asked the craftsman to place the targets at 50 meters, 80 meters, 100 meters, and 120 meters respectively. He began to test. He held the crossbow machine with one hand and the handle with the other. Then, he aimed the crossbow machine at the target in the distance and pulled the trigger with his finger. Bang! The sound of the bowstring vibrating was heard. The bolt instantly shot to the target in the distance and hit the bullseye. Then Su Len continued to load the crossbow and shoot. Bang, bang, bang. The sound of the bowstring was heard continuously. In a short while, Su Len shot out more than 10 bolts. Then, he began to check the lethality of the bolts. The bolts on the 50-meter target directly penetrated the target. These targets were all made of hardwood and were 7 centimeters thick. It was not easy to penetrate them. The bolts on the 80-meter target also penetrated deeply. On the 100-meter target, the bolts on the 100-meter target were very shallow, only about 1 centimeter deep. On the 100-meter target, the bolts on the 100-meter target could be easily pulled out. Basically, the bolts on the 100-meter target had no lethality. Su Len used a force of 30 kilograms to load the crossbow. An adult could easily pull it open. The power was also a so-so. The lethality was very strong within 80 meters. At 50 meters, it could penetrate armor. Beyond 100 meters, the power would plummet. The bolts were different from bows because they did not have feathers and were very unstable. Beyond a certain distance, the power would not be as strong. However, a 30-kilogram crossbow was only the most basic. Usually, the crossbow was more than 60 kilograms. At that time, the range of the bolts would definitely be longer and the penetrating effect would be stronger. In fact, a 60-kilogram crossbow only needed to be strengthened. The main body of the crossbow did not need to be changed. After Su Len tested the crossbow and confirmed that there were no problems, he let the craftsman research and design the bolts. Su Len did not plan to participate in the research and design. If he did everything himself, what would the craftsman do? As a lord, he was very busy. He only planned to take some time to take a look at the Weapons Research Institute and give some advice if there were any problems that he could not solve. When Su Len established the Weapons Research Institute, the corresponding training in the barracks had already begun. The militia system in North Town was now established. The militia was different from professional soldiers. The militia had a very low salary. They had at least 5 days of training per month. The rest of the time, they worked as usual. The militia's training had also been changed. It was now about formations and getting familiar with all kinds of commands and flags. In fact, military training was mostly about formations. Whether it was spearmen or archers, they all needed to know how to arrange formations. The soldiers in North Town City were currently training the crossbowmen in a phalanx. Once the crossbows were made, they would be able to fight very quickly. The soldiers did not need to go out to fight. They would usually stay in the city to defend. The crossbowmen needed the support of other troops when they went out to fight. The crossbowmen were only powerful when they were in a tight formation. Without a formation, or if the formation was loose, the crossbowmen were like lambs waiting to be slaughtered. At the same time, the crossbowmen needed other troops to protect their flanks. Otherwise, they would be ambushed from the back. The current militia in North Town City did not have the mental fortitude to do so. North Town City now had the security force, the regular army, and the militia. The total number of soldiers was over 10,000. The total population of Sullen's territory was less than 150,000. Of course, this did not include the goblins, kobolds, and other slaves. This ratio was already very high compared to the surrounding countries. The salary of the North Town City army was also higher than that of the surrounding countries. The finances of North Town City were a little tight. Originally, the income of North Town City was enough to support so many soldiers, but there was too much work to do in North Town City. The most expensive thing in North Town City was all kinds of projects. Although many materials could be produced in North Town City to reduce the cost, many magic materials could only be bought from merchant caravans. For example, the magic materials shipped from the Roland via City Alliance would cost at least twice as much here. Moreover, many magic experiments required the consumption of gold. Gold was a commonly used material in alchemy, and Hathaway was also a huge consumer of gold. According to the statistics of some wizards, a legendary wizard could consume several tons to a dozen tons of gold in their lifetime. For example, the magic gold that wizards made was a substitute for fine gold. It required a lot of gold to make. Thorium, which was used to replace mithril, was also made with silver. Building a wizard tower would cost at least a few million kinnar. By now, most of the wealth in Sullen's treasury had been used up. Luckily, there were still gold and silver mines that were still being excavated. Every month, there would be a large amount of gold and silver coming into the treasury. The restoration of the secret realm had slowed down, so Sulen decided to build the wizard tower first. Since he was ready to establish a duchy, Sulen was also preparing to issue his own currency. The currency exchange in this world was very messy. There were more than 30 kinds of gold coins, and they all had different weight and weight. The most valuable gold coin was the wealth coin issued by the Church of Wealth. Because of the high quality of this gold coin, it was very popular throughout the continent. Merchants loved to collect this kind of wealth gold coin the most. On the front of the coin was the portrait of the Lady of Wealth, and on the back was the emblem of the Church of Wealth. It could be said that because of the pursuit of wealth, the Lady of Wealth had a large number of followers. Maybe it was because of the money, but most of these people were just ordinary followers. There were not many devout followers or fanatics. Those merchants were all speculators, and it was very difficult to make them believe in a god wholeheartedly. Sulen was going to make the coins with the wonders of his territory printed on them. As for why he did not put his own face on them, Sulen felt too ashamed. Also, because of the technology, the face on the gold coins was not very clear. Of course, because the Church of Wealth was rich, they used divine spells to help. However, Sulen did not have that many wizards to help him make the coins. He was going to print the image of the Arc de Triomphe on the gold coins, and the face value of the gold coins on the front of the coins. At the same time, he was going to simplify the exchange rate of the gold coins. 1 gold coin for 18 silver coins, 1 gold coin for 36 silver coins, these stupid exchange rates would all be eliminated. He was going to exchange the coins at a rate of 1 to 10, but the weight of the gold coins had to be controlled. He could not lose money. Unifying the exchange rate would make it very convenient for ordinary people to trade. The Northern Citadel was definitely going to develop its business. Su Lin would not purposely make things difficult for him. The Northern Citadel already had experience in making coins. Now, they were just changing the coins of the Kingdom of Florence into the Northern Citadel's coins. In fact, gold coins were rarely made of pure gold. Pure gold was too soft and easily deformed. Therefore, some other metals were mixed in to increase the hardness. P.S. Su Lin is going to establish a duchy. Asking for the name of the duchy. The Northern Citadel is too out of character. Chapter 316. North Town City. On the reserved land of the Sky Garden, there were all kinds of building materials piled up. Because of the lack of manpower, the Sky Garden had not yet begun construction. Su Lin came here to do some preliminary research. Su Lin had already made the blueprint of the Sky Garden in the Tower Spirit's 3D simulation. He had to admit that the Sky Garden's 3D model did look very shiny. Su Lin was now thinking about adding a spring of vitality to the Sky Garden. Su Lin got this spring of vitality when he killed a water monster. It had always been stored in his storage dimension. The spring of vitality looked very normal. It was a spring with a crystal ball wrapped around it. The spring kept pouring out water, but the water in the crystal ball did not increase at all. This spring of vitality was not a normal spring. It was a magic spring. Su Lin wanted to put this spring in the arcane garden. Spring of vitality, this is a magical spring. It was born in nature. Its spring water has magical effects. The spring water has the effect of restoring life force. It can quickly restore stamina. Pure water plus 15, life recovery plus 15, stamina recovery plus 20, limitless plus 25. Magic spring water was very precious in this world. The most precious magic spring water in this world was called the Spring of Life. However, the Spring of Life only appeared in some records of the ancient arcanists. No wizard had ever seen it before. Many wizards doubted if this spring water really existed. The effect of the Spring of Life was very simple. After using it, it could heal all the injuries on the body and restore the body to its best condition. At the same time, it could also increase the user's lifespan by 1,000 years. Of course, each person could only use it once. The Fountain of Youth was actually the initial stage of the Spring of Life. It could heal all the injuries on the body and increase the user's lifespan by 200 years. Again, each person could only use it once. There were a few records of the Fountain of Youth on the continent. The most famous one was the legendary pirate king, Bartholomew Roberts. This pirate king was born in a noble family. He was a baron. Once again, he was captured by pirates during a sea trade. He joined the pirates and quickly became the leader of the pirates. This pirate king liked to wear a gorgeous black suit and jewelry. He looked gentle, but in fact, he was ruthless. He never left anyone alive when he robbed merchant ships. This pirate king rose quickly like a comet. It was said that he robbed hundreds of ships and defeated the navies of the coastal countries several times. He also established the pirate law and became a pirate king. It was said that this pirate king's wealth was tens of millions of kinnar. It was a pity that no one had discovered this wealth until now. This pirate king accidentally entered a sea after a robbery and finally came to a strange island where he found the Fountain of Youth. Unfortunately, he did not live to be hundreds of years old. He met another more powerful opponent, the ancient Red Dragon, who was now the Red Dragon Queen. The Red Dragon Queen defeated Bartholomew Roberts and enslaved all the pirates under this pirate king. Then, in a few years, she established the Red Dragon Kingdom in the Southern Sea and completely monopolized the sea trade in the Southern Sea. However, she was different from Bartholomew Roberts. The Red Dragon Queen encouraged trade and she collected taxes on every ship. As long as you paid the taxes, you could pass through the Southern Sea unimpeded. These ships would fly the Red Dragon Queen's flag, and the Red Dragon Queen would attack the pirates who attacked the ships flying the Red Dragon flag. Legend has it that Bartholomew Roberts used the Fountain of Youth to stimulate his life energy and successfully advanced to the legendary level. Then, his rise began. Some people speculated that Bartholomew Roberts hid all the gold, silver, and jewelry he robbed on the island where the Fountain of Youth was found. As long as one could find that path, not only could they obtain a huge amount of wealth, but they could also obtain a long life. Because of this, there was a period of time when a large number of adventurers rushed into the Southern Sea to find the legendary island. However, until now, no one had found it. Nature bred many treasures. The Fountain of Youth and the Fountain of Life were all bred by nature. Legend has it that when the world was born, there would be a world tree. The ancient elves used to serve the world tree. It was also because of the power of the world tree that the ancient elves had a lifespan of thousands of years and powerful strength. Of course, the ancient elves never admitted this because it was too long ago and there were no records left. It was a time when the ancient gods were active. Perhaps only the ancient gods hiding in some corner of the multiverse would know whether this was true or not. In addition to the Fountain of Youth, there were also petrifying springs and lucky springs. The petrifying springs could turn all kinds of objects into stone, so some people called it Medusa Springs. The lucky springs could increase luck. Although these springs were not as powerful as the Fountain of Youth, they were still precious. The Fountain of Vitality that Su Lan obtained could increase the recovery speed of his HP and stamina. It could also be used to make magic potions. The success rate of making magic potions with this Fountain of Vitality was also high. Although in theory, the Fountain of Vitality could be placed anywhere, Su Lan decided to place it in the Arcane Garden after asking the system. This was because the natural treasures were usually born at the central point where the elemental energy of nature gathered. Only in these places would there be a very low chance of being born. If someone wanted to move it, it would be very easy to destroy it. Of course, the Arcanists had found a way to transplant it. However, after the transplant, they still had to find a suitable place to place it. Once the elemental energy of the place was insufficient, the production of the Fountain of Vitality would decrease, and the Fountain of Vitality would gradually dry up. There was even a phenomenon where the Fountain of Vitality would be downgraded to a normal Fountain of Vitality. On the other hand, if the Fountain of Vitality was placed in a suitable place, there was a chance that the Fountain of Vitality would continue to grow. It was even possible that it could even level up. Of course, this possibility would take at least a few decades or even centuries. Su Lan didn't want to level up the Fountain of Vitality, but he couldn't let it be downgraded again. Therefore, he planned to place the Fountain of Vitality in the Arcane Garden. The Arcane Garden was actually an artificially created treasure land. Through runic matrices, legendary elemental cores, and a special layout, a central point where the elemental energy gathered was created. It couldn't be more suitable to place the Fountain of Vitality here. Hathaway was a little busy during this period. In addition to making obsidian golems, she was also making materials from the legendary water monster. The scales on the water monster's body had been processed. These scales were originally excellent magic materials. After some simple processing, these scales were handed over to the Grey Dwarf blacksmith for processing. The Grey Dwarf blacksmith would use these scales to make a set of dragon scale armor. In fact, it should be called fish scale armor. After all, these scales came from the water monster and not a dragon. The production of the dragon scale armor had already begun. The one who did it was the most skilled blacksmith master among the Grey Dwarves. After some research, Hathaway found that the meat cut off from the water monster was still edible. It also had some special effects. It could slightly increase attributes by about 1 or 2 points. Of course, this meat was not for ordinary people to eat. It was so poisonous that ordinary people would be poisoned to death in one bite. If the poison was removed, although the meat of the water monster could be eaten, the effect inside would disappear. Only Cryopteris could eat the meat of the water monster, so Su Len fed all the meat to Cryopteris. Cryopteris inherited part of the dragon's blood and had a high resistance to poison. Although the toxins in the meat of the water monster were high, they didn't feel any discomfort eating it. The meat of the water monster was about 12 tons, and the one that ate the most was Sullen's ice Quetzalcoatlus. After eating the water monster meat, the Cryopteris grew stronger and their bodies grew a lot. The meat of the water monster also had the effect of accelerating growth. The blood and heart of the water monster were purified by Hathaway into a kind of bloodline potion. After this bloodline potion was integrated, one could become a bloodline warlock. However, because of the level of the water monster's bloodline, it was difficult to advance to the legendary rank after using this bloodline potion. Even so, it was very precious. It was not easy to integrate the water monster's bloodline because it was very poisonous and corrosive. The integrator needed a high enough compatibility. Only when the compatibility was more than 70% would the success rate be more than 50%. When the compatibility was more than 80%, the success rate would reach 70%. When the compatibility was more than 90%, there was basically no possibility of failure. Su Len didn't plan to integrate the water monster's bloodline. The water monster was no match for him when it was alive, let alone someone who integrated its bloodline. However, although Su Len didn't like it, it didn't mean it was trash. A bottle of water monster's bloodline like this could create a warlock family. As long as Su Len was willing to sell it, there were still many people who were willing to buy it. Not all wizards had the chance to advance to the legendary rank. In fact, 90% of wizards would never cross the threshold of the legendary rank in their lifetime. Therefore, it was acceptable to be called a bloodline wizard. If this bottle of bloodline potion was done well, it could be sold for at least a few million kinnar. Su Len planned to put this bottle of bloodline potion up for auction when he had time. The legendary water monster's skin had been cut up. This legendary water monster was more than 10 meters long, and there were a lot of skin that was suitable for making wizard robes. Hathaway, Alex, Karina, and Grace each got a piece. As for the rest of the skin that wasn't suitable for making wizard robes, it would be made into leather armor. The skin of the water monster was much better than that of the ice Quetzalcoatlus. The remaining leather could be used to make about 12 half-body leather armors. Some parts could be used to make belts, leg guards, wrist guards, and so on. Nothing was wasted. Chapter 317. Hathaway's alchemy shop was doing very well during this period of time. With the wizard apprentices as free labor, and the magic plants in the secret realm beginning to mature, the alchemy shop had a large number of low-level potions. Many merchants saw that the price of the potions was not too high, so they would buy a batch. After the orc invasion, several surrounding countries paid a heavy price and finally drove the orcs back to their hometown. The trade in the North City began to recover. However, in addition to these caravans, Su Len also found that many adventurer teams had also come to the North City. These adventurer teams were preparing to go to the northern wilderness through the city. The northern wilderness was vast, and there were countless monsters and various tribes scattered all over the place. Although it was desolate, barren, and cold, there were still some precious magic plants and high-value magic beasts in many unknown corners. There were still many relics and buildings from the Witch King era and even the Arcane Empire era left in the northern wilderness. Most of these relics had become ruins, but there were probably many precious things buried in them. Among the adventurers, there would often be some lucky ones who found things left behind by ancient arcanists in the ruins and became rich overnight. Of course, such things did happen, but most of them came up empty-handed. Every year, many adventurers died in the various traps in the ruins. The life of an adventurer was not like the protagonists in the stories sung by bards. There were all kinds of thrilling experiences. Every time, they could turn danger into safety and gain a lot of benefits. Their strength would continue to increase, and finally, they would find the legendary treasure, gain a huge amount of wealth, and become a well-known adventurer on the continent. In fact, the adventurer's life was completely a business of life and death. Some down-and-out adventurers could not even afford to eat. Death was the most common thing among the adventurers. As for the treasure, many people had never experienced it in their lives. There were many adventurers in the North City, which made the city's security a little chaotic. Many adventurers were unwilling to follow the rules of the North City, so they could only let the security army educate these people. Of course, it was not a good idea to chase all of them away. The strength of the adventurers could be said to be uneven, with the weakest being a farmer who had just discovered a hoe, and the strongest being a legendary powerhouse. Moreover, these people were not only capable of causing chaos, but could also be of help if used well. Sulan had the town hall set up an adventurers' guild, which specialized in issuing quests and paying rewards for adventurers to complete. For example, clearing monsters, capturing goblins and kobolds as slaves, or purchasing special plants and rare magical plants. Of course, adventurers could also be asked to gather intelligence in the wilderness. On one hand, they were offering quests and rewards. On the other hand, they were cracking down on adventurers who broke the rules. The adventurers of Northern Town City quickly learned to adapt to this city. Due to the rapid development of the city and the influx of merchants and adventurers, the taverns in the northern part of the city were no longer enough. Therefore, Sulan opened 2 more taverns on the same street. There were now 5 taverns in the northern part of the city. At the same time, on a street near the Adventurers Guild where quests were issued, many adventurers spontaneously formed a small market there. Sulan would occasionally come here for a stroll. There were often some strange things in the market, but of course, most of them were useless trash. "Hey, buddy, you're dressed like that. Are you going on an adventure?" Just as Sulan was strolling, a fat man in a dirty linen robe with a wretched face sneaked up to him. Because he was strolling, Sulan did not wear noble clothes. Instead, he was dressed like an adventurer. "Hey, let me finish. Don't be in a hurry to leave. A lot of newcomers like you have come here to try their luck, but most of them returned empty-handed. Some unlucky ones even lost their lives. The northern wastelands are still very dangerous. There are many places that cannot be conquered with brute force. You need more information. Also, you need to know which places are deadly. You must not go near them. Look, I have a map of the northern wastelands. With it, you will know which places are dangerous, which tribes you can trade for food, and which tribes you can't go near." As he spoke, the wretched fat man grabbed his collar with both hands and pulled it out. There were a dozen books hanging inside his windbreaker. Sulan roughly counted. There were maps of the wastelands, maps of the wasteland's ruins, maps of the wasteland's magical beasts, maps of the wasteland's territories, and so on. There were at least a dozen books. Information about the wastelands? Sulan glanced at the so-called information maps of the wretched fat man. Most of the information was fake, or something that one would know after living in the northern town for a period of time. These unscrupulous businessmen made these information books to cheat the newcomers who had just come here. Yes, this is definitely the latest information about the wastelands. Even the mayor of the northern town city bought it from us, Fat Ben said proudly. Sulan looked at the scammer in front of him and said, "If it's so good, then give me a copy. 1 silver NR per book. I don't sell on credit." Fat Ben's eyes flashed. "Sure." Sulan flicked his thumb and threw a silver NR over. Fat Ben caught the NR with an agility that far exceeded his body. He then pinched the NR between his thumb and middle finger and blew hard on it. He then put it to his ear. After hearing a crisp sound, he opened his windbreaker with a smile and said, "Pick anything you like." Su Len picked up a book called Dangerous Wastelands. The book was written on paper that had been improved several times in the northern town city. The paper was yellowish and rough, but it could be written and read. The book only had a dozen pages, and it looked rough at first glance. He flipped through the pages. As he expected, most of the information recorded in the book was from the past. Su Len curled his lips and waved at a few security guards not far away. Fat Ben was still talking to Su Len about the rest of his books. "Sir, what can I do for you?" Just as Ben was trying to sell his books to Su Len, 2 security guards had already arrived behind him. Fat Ben looked behind him in confusion. After seeing that it was the security guards, his face changed and his body instinctively wanted to run away. "This man is selling fake information here. Arrest him." "Yes, sir." Ben sensed that something was wrong and wanted to run away. However, as soon as he moved, he was subdued by the 2 security guards. "F***ck, you guys are trying to trick me. You have no morals. You guys are working together to trick me, Fat Ben. Throw this guy to clean the trash and public toilets for 3 months." Su Len said directly. "Sir, I'm really not a scammer. Please forgive me this time." Ben's face turned green when he heard that he would be punished to clean toilets for 3 months. He quickly begged for mercy. "That won't do. Selling fake information and cheating people. You're lucky I didn't punish you for a year." Su Len waved his hand and signaled the security guards to take him away. "Sir, I'm not lying to you. It's true. I just got an important piece of information that I didn't have time to tell you." Seeing that he was about to be taken away, Ben couldn't care less and quickly said, "Wait a minute." Su Len took a few steps forward and stood in front of Ben. "You said you have important information? What important information?" "If I tell you, you have to ask these people to let me go," Ben said carefully. Su Len glanced at him. "You have no room to bargain. If it's really important information, I can let you go this time. But if it's not, hee. I swear, it's definitely important information." Su Len waved at the 2 security guards and asked them to let go of Ben. "Speak." Ben moved his sore shoulders, and then said, "Sir, this is the information I just got from an adventurer." That adventurer had a small team of 5 people. Except for him, the rest were all left there. Su Len looked at him expressionlessly. Ben forced a smile and said, when the guy came back, he had a mental breakdown. He said they encountered monsters in a canyon north of the city. There were a lot of monsters and they were fearless. Go find the survivor. Su Len frowned and said to one of the security guards. Soon, according to Ben's description, the security guards found the survivor in a tavern. However, the survivor was just as Ben said. He was mentally traumatized and almost went crazy. Monsters. So many monsters. Run, where is the canyon? Su Len asked Ben, who was next to him. It's northeast of the city, in the Sierra de Lotus. I named it the Canyon of Despair. There's a map in that book, Ben said quickly. Su Len opened the book in his hand and found the description of the Canyon of Despair. There was a simple map at the bottom. The Canyon of Despair was marked with red paint, and the words, "extremely dangerous," were written next to it. Okay, if this information is correct, then you've done a good deed. Your sentence will be reduced to 1 month. You'll only have to clean the streets, not the toilets, Su Len said as he put away the book. Then, as Ben wailed, he signaled the security guards to take him away. Su Len then waved his hand again, and another security guard came forward to greet him. Sir, what are your orders? Go and inform the people in the council hall to gather the basic information about Northern Battlefront City. Let the newcomers know more about Northern Battlefront City so that they won't be tricked. Yes, sir. Chapter 318. The Adventurers' Guild was not a unified guild. Most of them were formed by nobles. There were no large guilds in this world that could be found all over the continent. Whether it was nobles or churches, such guilds were not allowed to exist. For example, the Thieves' Guild and the Adventurers' Guild were basically formed by the local people. After checking some information, Su Len decided to go to the Canyon of Despair to have a look. According to the collected information, it was very likely that there were monsters in the Canyon of Despair. Monsters were different from magical beasts. They were a kind of mutated and distorted monster that had been contaminated by radiation. They had strong vitality and were very polluting. If they were given time, these monsters would evolve into evil creatures. It was said that the ancestors of these monsters were some ancient evil creatures. The wizard world did not have a conclusion about how these things came to be, but their danger level was on the same level as abominations and hatred. Ancient evil creatures were very difficult to kill. Their bodies were very strong and they were very polluting. Many times, when they couldn't kill these ancient evil creatures, they would choose to seal them. For example, the rune-sealing magic array of the sorcerers was specially prepared to deal with these ancient evil creatures. There were also many legendary monks in the monasteries, which also suppressed some ancient evil creatures. What Su Luen was worried about was whether the things that appeared in the Canyon of Despair were monsters. Many ancient ruins did not contain treasures. Some ancient ruins were used by the ancient arcanists to seal powerful creatures. Some evil creatures would gradually weaken under the seal of the arcanists and eventually die. There were also some monsters that had been sealed for a long time. Once the seal lost its effect, those monsters might break out of the seal. When that time came, these monsters that had been sealed for thousands of years would definitely make a big fuss. After putting on his cloak, Su Len whistled. The Pegasus quickly galloped over. Su Len jumped lightly and skillfully flipped over the Pegasus. Then, according to the mark on the map, he galloped toward the Canyon of Despair in the Sierra de Lotus. The Pegasus galloped in the air. In less than 2 hours, Su Len arrived near the Canyon of Despair. A piece of black land appeared in front of him. Everything in the Canyon of Despair, from the soil to the rocks, was black. At first glance, the entire canyon gave off a ghostly feeling. Su Luen frowned. This place didn't seem to be simply polluted. It was mixed with the aura of death. This is the stench of the undead, and it has been contaminated. Su Len grabbed a handful of black soil and squeezed it lightly. There's also the power of ice. What kind of monster is this? Su Len frowned. Evil creatures were difficult to deal with because of their ability to pollute. They could pollute almost all living things, which was why there were so many types of evil creatures. Su Luen snapped his fingers, and the ring on his hand flashed with a spiritual light, and an energy shield enveloped him silently. Little fellow, you go play by yourself first. I'll look for you when I'm done with my business. Su Len rubbed the Pegasus' mane. The Pegasus snorted and rubbed against Su Len's body. Then, it turned around and went into the forest. The Pegasus was the darling of nature. The trees and vines in the forest would automatically avoid it, and they could even help it hide. Seeing the Pegasus leave, Su Len turned around and walked towards the Canyon of Despair. As soon as he entered the canyon, he felt an elemental vibration. Someone is casting spells here. Su Len immediately reacted. Then, he saw that not far from the entrance of the canyon, a man dressed as a wizard was fighting with 2 strange-looking corpses. A fireball the size of a soccer ball flew out. One of the corpses was directly blown into pieces. The other corpse was also blown away. Before the corpse could stand up, the man dressed as a wizard quickly rushed up and chopped off the corpse's head with his long sword. Then, with a few more slashes, he skillfully dismembered the corpse. After the man dealt with the 2 corpses, he looked back at Su Len. Then, the wizard frowned and walked towards Su Len. Didn't anyone tell you that low-level wizards can't get close to this place? When you came out to explore the continent, didn't your teacher tell you? The middle-aged wizard seemed to treat Su Len as a low-level wizard. Indeed, if one only looked at the wizard's level, Su Len could only be considered a low-level wizard. The mana wave on his body couldn't lie unless he learned how to hide it. Su Len didn't know how to answer. He couldn't tell the wizard that he wasn't a wizard, but a warrior. In the wild, not many people would take the initiative to reveal their trump card, let alone a stranger. So, he just smiled at the wizard and didn't answer. Alright, whatever. Don't blame me for not reminding you when the time comes. After seeing Sullen's reaction, the wizard was obviously dissatisfied. He didn't say anything else and turned around to walk into the canyon. Most wizards were more introverted. Only the wizards from the academy were relatively better. As for the wizards from the divination school, they were all like charlatans. In comparison, warlocks had much better communication skills than wizards. Perhaps it was because many warlocks were from noble families. Also, a warlock with a high innate charm could easily gain the favor of others. Su Len watched the wizard leave. This wizard's strength should be a high-grade wizard, very close to a rank 4 wizard. What surprised Su Len was that he should be a combat wizard. After all, although many wizards had learned close combat, there weren't many who were as proficient as this one. System. Scan the surrounding terrain. Create a three-dimensional image. Following Sullen's command, an invisible light spread out from Sullen's body and swept across the canyon. Soon, a three-dimensional image of the Canyon of Despair appeared in front of Su Len. Warning. Undead magic creatures are approaching. There are more than 20 of them. Unknowingly, a fog rose in the canyon. After Su Len entered the canyon, the fog became thicker and thicker. Now, it had affected his sense of direction. Ordinary people couldn't tell the direction at all. In the fog, there were some vague figures moving in the fog. From time to time, there were sounds that sounded like the howling of the wind and crying. Along with the surrounding fog, a black shadow suddenly jumped out. Su Len swung his long sword and cut the thing in half. Looking at the monster on the ground, Su Len couldn't help but frown. This monster looked like a human corpse, but there were some twisted tentacles growing out of its body. There was also an ugly sarcoma on its head. Its body was as shriveled as a corpse. What kind of monster is this? Su Luen frowned as he saw that the monster that had been cut in two wasn't dead. Its two arms and tentacles seemed to be trying to reattach its body. Su Luen swung his sword and cut the corpse into pieces. The tentacles were also cut off, and he stomped on the ugly lump of flesh and exploded it. It really is a contaminated body. Dark brown blood flowed out, and a sizzling sound came from the ground. It sounded like acid corrosion. Haste. Enchanted weapon. Wizard armor. Su Len quickly cast a spell and buffed himself. He was now preparing to combine wizard spells with his fighting style. It was a bit similar to the fighting style of a combat wizard, but he was more like a warrior. Of course, this was also the idea of hiding his strength. In fact, many people had done this before. There was once a sword saint who was a wizard. He buffed himself with petrifying skin, haste, bear's tenacity, energy deflection field, and wizard armor. Then he raised his sword and slashed people. The sword saint's attack was already very strong, but their body's defense was not even as good as a wizard's. In the end, after buffing himself with so many buffs, this sword saint rushed into the crowd like a berserker. No, it was a sword storm. It was a massacre. Because sword saints gave up on defense and pursued the ultimate attack, their attack power could be said to be the highest among all the physical professions. They also mastered the eye of insight and weak point attack. Even the energy shield of an elite wizard could be broken in front of them. Once they had a chance to show off, it would be a nightmare. Therefore, on the battlefield, as long as the opponent was a sword saint, the first thing they would do was to focus fire on him. The death rate of sword saints was also the highest among all the professions. Of course, the number of enemies they killed was also much higher than other professions. Most sword saints died before reaching the legendary level, which was why legendary level sword saints were so rare. Most of the time, wizards looked down on warriors, but all wizards respected sword saints. Fireball. An orange fireball appeared in Sullen's palm, and he instantly flew forward. Boom! A loud sound was heard. The fireball exploded, and the corpse that was hit directly turned into pieces of charcoal. Even the other monsters around it were affected. Sulen dodged and dodged a black ray attack. Ray attacks were the fastest among all the spells, so they needed to be dodged in advance. After Sulen gained the ability to dodge, he could easily predict the attack. Sulen exerted force on his feet and jumped up in an instant. His long sword directly cut a monster in half, and a large amount of black blood gushed out. The blood of these monsters was very corrosive, just like strong acid. Luckily, Sulen had enchanted his weapon. Otherwise, he would have to change his weapon after a few battles. Other than these corpse monsters, Sulen also found a type of monster that had a sarcoma on its head that had turned into a giant eye. Compared to the monsters before, these monsters' bodies were no longer shriveled. They looked a lot stronger. Other than a mouth full of sharp teeth, there was also a giant eye on its face. It looked very disgusting. That eye also shot out a black ray. Chapter 319. In the era of the Arcane Kingdom, the ancient evils belonged to the most dangerous type of enemy. What was more dangerous than them were the abominations and the ancient abominations. The abominations were simply the children of the gods who died prematurely. The more powerful the life, the more difficult it was to have children. The children of the gods were born as gods, so it was more difficult to be born. The abominations were the children of the gods who died before they were born. There were also some abominations that were born from the corpses of the gods, but no matter which kind, they were very dangerous. Because they died prematurely, these abominations hated all life, and even hated the whole world. Every abomination had endless hatred. Although the abominations were not gods, they still had many godlike powers, which made all the abominations very powerful. As for the Archean abominations, these monsters lived in the same period as the ancient gods. In the knowledge of wizards, there was a special database for each Archean abomination. Of course, that database only recorded the Archean abominations that had been discovered. The most famous one was the abomination dragon. In the information of the dragon of hatred, there was a description, the abominations left over from the ancient times. They are the general name of a group of powerful creatures left over from the era ruled by the dragons. The dragon of hatred is the strongest among them. The oldest dragon of hatred can easily destroy everything, including the gods. Even other creatures of hatred are afraid of them. At present, the known dragons of hatred were the illusionary dragon of the color dragons, the Hui dragon of the metal dragons, the blue diamond dragon of the gem dragons, the stardust dragon of the spirit dragons, and the 38 pterosaur of the iguana dragons. In fact, the difference between the legendary dragons and the dragon of hatred was not big. The legendary dragons of the ancient dragon era were not weaker than the dragon of hatred, such as the time dragon of the ancient dragon era. In addition to the dragon of hatred, there were also centimanes, hydra, typhon, and so on. None of these monsters were easy to deal with. Since entering the era of the new gods, the abominations and the ancient abominations rarely appeared. Occasionally, some of the ancient abominations that appeared were sealed or exiled after paying a huge price. Sulen killed the last demonic eye monster that had surrounded him. He shook his sword lightly to get rid of the dark brown blood on it. These monsters were not very powerful. The only troublesome thing was that the demonic eyes that had grown to maturity could use energy rays to attack. It was a kind of ray filled with corrosive and death energy. Su Len guessed that these energy rays were likely to have the property of instant death. Instant death spells had a very disgusting ability, which was that they had a certain chance of directly killing the enemy. Among them, the most representative was the Angel of Death. This kind of monster that lived in the bottomless abyss was born with the ability to cast the gaze of death. In other words, it was the legendary ability to impregnate anyone it glared at. Of course, the instant death rate of this kind of spell was very low, about 1 in 1,000. Of course, if the level difference between the caster and the target was too big, the success rate would also increase. In addition, there were many factors such as divinity, the opponent's physique, and so on. The wizard's Finger of Death spell was said to be a spell that imitated the gaze of death. These demonic eye monsters in front of him had a similar disgusting ability. Although the probability was very low, when there were enough of them, the quantitative change would lead to a qualitative change. If Su Len was unlucky and really bumped into them, he would not even be able to cry. Arcane Missile. By Yubiubiu. A series of arcane missiles shot out, directly turning the demonic eye monster that dared to sneak attack into a sieve. Su Len piled the bodies of these monsters together, then took out a special die used to assist in the release of fireball, and directly ignited the bodies of these monsters. Although these monsters' bodies were already dead, they were still very polluting. The simplest way to deal with them was to burn them. After cleaning up these monsters, Su Len continued to move deeper into the canyon. Soon, he found a lot of human remains. These corpses were badly damaged, and there were many badly damaged swords and equipment scattered around. According to the information Su Len had obtained, these people had died at most a week ago. It was very likely that the surrounding fog had caused them to become like this. Damn it, why is there a monster here? Fortunately, I found it early. If I had waited for it to grow slowly, it might have become an evil creature, and then it would be even harder to clean up. Su Len pursed his lips. The most disgusting thing about monsters was their corruption, pollution, and rapid evolution. As long as there was enough flesh and blood, it wouldn't take long for an ordinary monster to transform into an evil creature. Of course, it was still very difficult for an evil creature to transform into an ancient evil creature, but it was still very fast compared to other creatures. It seems that I still need to send more people to investigate the surrounding area in the future. This time, I was lucky to find it. If I hadn't found it and given them enough time to grow, the losses would have been great. Su Len calculated in his heart. Bang! There was a loud noise. Sullen's figure flashed, and he ran toward the place where the sound came from. After passing through the mist, he immediately saw the figure of the magus from before. However, the magus seemed to be in a sorry state. There were a few corpses of demon-eyed corpses scattered on the ground. There were also 2 monsters that looked like mountains of flesh. There were more than 20 eyes of various sizes on the mountains of flesh. These monsters could make a person's sanity level drop by just looking at them. However, at this time, the 2 monsters had become a pile of mud, and the wizard's face had become a little pale. Obviously, this guy was not doing well. Su Len looked at him and said, "You're not in a good condition now. It's better to leave this place as soon as possible." The wizard did not answer. Instead, he took out a bottle of potion and raised his head to drink it. "Can you solve the problem here? You should have seen those monsters. They are monsters. If we don't get rid of them as soon as possible, they will grow into evil creatures, and we will be in big trouble." Su Len looked at the wizard with a little surprise. He never thought that as a selfish wizard, there would be someone who would sacrifice himself to save the world. "Don't look at me like that. The monsters in this canyon were originally sealed by the wizard school I belong to. Since the day the school was established, we have made an oath to seal this monster forever. Although thousands of years have passed, and the school I belong to has withered to this point, the responsibility on our shoulders does not allow us to retreat. For some people, an oath was more important than their lives. It was very sacred, and many oaths had magical powers. The most typical example was the monk. The commandments they followed were actually a kind of oath. This wizard in front of him had made an oath to seal the monsters in this canyon. Sulen put away his long sword and said slowly, "Can you still fight? Let's work together to clear out the monsters here." "You?" The wizard looked at Sulen suspiciously. Sulen did not mind. "Let me introduce myself. My name is Sulen, the Lord of the Northern Town." "You are the Lord of the Northern Town?" the wizard said with a surprised face. "Let's go." Sulen did not answer. He took the lead and walked into the canyon. "Oh, right. What's your name?" "Lorraine Anders." Sulen chose to go with Lorraine not only because he wanted a helper, but more importantly, Lorraine knew about the monsters sealed in this canyon. She must know more about the situation here than Sulen. With Lorraine's help, things would be easier. Sulen originally thought that there was a monster here, but now it seemed that there was a big monster sealed in here. The monster was at most a small boss. The monster was sealed in the deepest part of the canyon. As they continued to move forward, they encountered more and more monsters. However, these monsters could not resist Sulen at all. The lightning wrapped around Sulen's weapon easily electrocuted all the monsters into ashes. Even the Flesh Mountain monster eyes were hit by Sulen's lightning spear as soon as they appeared. In the deepest part of the canyon, there were many traces of corrosion on the ground. This was the sign that the sealed monster's power was corroding outwards. Screech! A sharp sound was heard. The energy barrier in front of Sulen flickered a few times, and then with a bang, it shattered like glass. Sulen felt a sharp pain in his brain. Soul howl. At this moment, sharp spikes suddenly shot out from the ground, trying to pierce through Sulen. Sulen suddenly felt a sense of danger. Although his brain was in pain, his body instinctively dodged, and he just happened to dodge the spikes. At the same time, he summoned a lightning spear and threw it at the ground. The ground shook, and then a large amount of black blood gushed out. "Be careful, this is a corrupted prowler." Sulen's brain quickly recovered from the pain, and he did not stop. He quickly threw out a few lightning spears. Seeing that Sulen was fine, Lorraine breathed a sigh of relief and said, "The soul howl just now must have been caused by that evil creature. We made a mistake in our judgment. That monster has transformed into an evil creature." The main target of the soul howl just now was not him, but he was also affected. Sulen was unharmed, but Lorraine's wizard robe was pierced, and his body was injured. "Evil creature? That's even better." Sulen grinned, and then took out the purple dragon halberd. In the depths of the canyon was a huge crypt, filled with chaotic, corrupt energy. As soon as the two of them stepped into the cave, a large number of devil-eyed corpses and demonic eyes of flesh appeared before them. Next, they furiously attacked the two of them. Tens of negative energy beams shot out in an instant. Sulen's face sank and he instantly stuck close to the wall to hide behind a protruding rock. Lorraine's reaction was just as fast. With a flash of light, Lorraine's figure disappeared from the prime material world, and entered a crack in the dimensional space. A large number of negative energy beams hit the rock, but it was a pity that the rock was not alive, and only some fragments fell off. Chapter 320. Sulen didn't dare to take the risk of being killed by dozens of negative energy rays. He could only dodge for a while, but he soon came up with a solution. Roar! War roar! A loud sound came from Sulen's mouth in an instant. This kind of sonic attack exploded in the narrow cave and its power was even stronger. The sound waves reverberated throughout the cave and the sound was deafening. A wave of sonic attack was like a tidal wave. The demon-eyed corpses and demon-eyed corpses that were originally gathered together were cut down in rows by this sonic attack as if they were grass. If one looked closely, they would see a large amount of black blood spurting out from the eyes, mouth, and ears of these monsters. In fact, their brains had been shattered into paste by the sound wave attack just now. A wave of clearing. Su Lin was relieved. He felt a little uncomfortable from the wave of attack just now. After all, sound waves couldn't distinguish between friend and foe. Did you do this? Lorraine came out of the dimensional crevice and looked at Su Lin in shock. Not far away, there were hundreds of monster corpses lying on the ground in disarray. Who else could it be other than me? Su Lin glared at this guy. He wasn't very powerful, but his ability to escape was top-notch. That spell just now, even if there was a nuclear explosion here, it wouldn't affect him at all. Of course, this kind of spell had a counter, such as Spacetime Shield and Dimensional Anchor, which were specially designed to deal with this kind of escape spell. Lorraine pretended not to see and pointed at the depths of the cave. Let's go. Let's quickly get rid of the thing inside and then seal it. If we delay too long, that monster will break out of the seal and we'll all be in trouble. A large number of strange sarcomas appeared on the ground in front of them. These sarcomas looked like hearts, beating very rhythmically. There was also a slippery carpet on the ground around them, which looked very disgusting. Seeing this, Lorraine said with a serious expression, "This is an evil creature hatching monsters." Chain of fireballs. Bursting flames. Lorraine waved the staff in his hand, and in the next second, a dazzling light appeared. Fireballs flew past one after another, and a dull explosion sounded. Scorching flames rose up, and the air was filled with a burning smell. The carpet on the ground quickly withered and died. The sarcomas were burned into charcoal by the flames, and there were traces of melting on the ground. Be careful. Do you want to be buried alive? Su Lin said as he patted the falling stones. Using an explosive spell like fireball in this kind of underground environment was a test of the cave structure. If they weren't careful, the cave wouldn't be able to withstand it and would collapse. At that time, the two of them would be buried alive. It's too late. That evil creature is mass-producing monsters. We don't have time to waste, Lorraine said anxiously. Let me know the next time you cast a spell, so I can dodge it first. Su Lin glanced at him, and quickly rushed through the cave where the ground was still hot. A thick smell of blood came from the cave, and a huge blood pool appeared in front of them. It was about the size of a basketball court, filled with a viscous liquid that looked like fresh blood. In the middle of the blood pool, a huge meatball with a diameter of 3 meters was beating rhythmically. Tentacles like blood vessels went deep into the blood pool, transferring all kinds of energy to the meatball. Purple veins bulged on the meatball, and in the middle of the meatball, a humanoid creature was rapidly growing. This was an evil creature that was evolving. This kind of evil creature would create all kinds of monsters, and then use these monsters to collect all kinds of nutrients for itself. Finally, after receiving a lot of nutrients, the evil creature would continue to evolve into an ancient evil creature. Of course, the evil creature in front of them wasn't evolving into an ancient evil creature. There weren't enough animals and humans around for it to devour. If it wanted to evolve from an evil creature to an ancient evil creature, it would need at least a few 100,000 people. There weren't enough animals around the Sierra de Lotus for it to evolve. The evil creature in front of them sensed danger and changed from its incubation state to its combat state. However, it changed a little too late, and the two just happened to bump into it. Lightning Spear. Su Lin reached out his hand, and dazzling lightning appeared in his hand. A spear made completely of lightning energy appeared in his hand. Compared to the lightning spear before, Sulin's was more powerful this time. A huge amount of lightning energy was compressed into the spear. The spear emitted a violent aura, as if it was going to explode in the next second. Even the meatball in the middle of the blood pool sensed danger. A large amount of energy was quickly extracted from the blood pool, and the meatball shook even more violently. Go! The lightning spear turned into a ray of light, and instantly hit the meatball in the middle of the blood pool. Boom! Dazzling lightning instantly exploded, and the entire blood pool was shrouded in lightning energy. The flesh and blood turned into charcoal in an instant, and a large amount of blood evaporated. The original meatball exploded under this attack. However, such a serious attack didn't kill the transforming evil creature. After the meatball exploded, the half-transformed evil creature gave up on its perfect state, and ended its evolution prematurely. The lightning energy wreaked havoc on its body, and the evil creature's body was charred black. However, the charred areas were quickly covered by new flesh and blood, and the evil creature's injuries began to recover quickly. What tenacious vitality! Seeing this, Sulen flipped his hand, and the purple dragon halberd appeared. In the next second, his body was shrouded in dazzling lightning, and countless lightning energy appeared around him. Sulen was like the god of thunder, and directly rushed toward the evil creature. The flesh and blood around the evil creature was quickly withering, and its body was quickly recovering. Sulen's body was like lightning, and he instantly passed through the blood pool. The purple dragon halberd stabbed out with endless lightning. Puff! A dull sound was heard, as if a balloon had been pierced. The purple dragon halberd and the crescent halberd next to it stabbed into the evil creature's body. A large amount of lightning energy instantly poured into the evil creature's body. After a short moment of silence, there was an explosion. The whole body of the evil creature burst open in an instant. A large amount of purple-black liquid burst out in all directions, and the surrounding flesh and blood quickly withered at this moment. With a flash of lightning, Suluen's figure appeared on the edge of the blood pool. His body was surrounded by lightning, and all the flesh and blood near him were electrocuted into a mass of charcoal. In Sulen's hand, there was a huge head, and in the middle of the head was a terrifying eyeball. It was the evil creature's head, and its body had been completely turned into nothingness by Sulen's attack. Soul extraction. Soul-sucking technique. After seeing the evil creature, Lorraine's staff shot out a purple light. Ah! A mournful scream was heard, and the sound seemed to be able to penetrate the soul. In reality, this was an illusion. The evil creature was already in a soul state, so it couldn't make a sound. However, this evil creature's soul was very powerful, and it had reached a level where it could interfere with reality. The evil creature's soul was pulled out without any resistance. It was a huge mountain of flesh, and its body was covered with tentacles and eyes. Looking at it made one's scalp tingle. A large amount of souls rushed out of the mountain of flesh, and in the blink of an eye, the mountain of flesh shrank at a speed visible to the naked eye. Finally, a strange ball of flesh with a dense evil aura appeared in front of them, and in the next second, it was sealed in a gem by a ray of light. The souls that regained their freedom instantly woke up. They calmly said something to the two of them, and then under the guidance of a strange force, they turned into countless fluorescent lights and disappeared. Ding ding dang dang. A messy sound was heard, and gray soul crystals fell to the ground. Although they couldn't hear the voices of the souls, from the shape of their mouths, it seemed like they were saying thank you. These souls were lucky. They hadn't been digested by the evil creature yet. If Sulen came a few days later, these souls would have been digested by the evil creature. Sulen looked around and saw about a dozen gray soul crystals on the ground. This level of soul crystal could be used in many experiments. It was a good material. Here you go, these are your spoils of war. A gem was thrown over. Sulen raised his hand and caught it. He opened his hand and saw that it was the gem that imprisoned the evil creature's soul. It's a pity that it's not a legendary rank, but it's still a top-quality soul crystal. Sulen nodded at him and played with it for a while. Then he put it away. "Oh right, you rest first. I'll repair the seal here." He didn't even need to do anything in the battle just now. Sulan had taken care of the evil creature. This evil creature was very difficult to deal with for wizards below the legendary rank. It had powerful recovery abilities and many attacks. It would take a long time to kill it. However, Sulan could kill it in one round. Lorraine was shocked by Sulan's power. Soon, he found the seal rune circle in the cave. At this point, many of the runes on the circle were damaged. Many places were corroded by the corrosive energy, and a powerful polluting energy kept leaking out. On the rune circle, a pale golden light was fighting against the corrosive energy. It was because of this energy that the polluting evil energy didn't continue to expand. This energy was absorbed by the fungus and transferred to the evil creature. It was because of this that the evil creature was able to transform into an evil creature so quickly. Lorraine took out some silver metal and summoned a flame to melt it. He then added some other materials. Finally, a silver liquid with a strange glow began to flow down the rune circle. The damaged area was quickly repaired. The corroded area once again flashed with a golden spirit light. The golden spirit light quickly expanded, completely dispelling and suppressing the corrosive energy in the surroundings. Done. Where are you going next? You still haven't decided? Do you want to come to Northtown City? I'm going to build, sure. You're tuning in to the UnparalleledSwordWill YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.